There's one thing I know. That jive-ass turkey better have my motherfucking butter. Every time you see me, I got Adidas on. But I still can check a bitch, so better watch your tone. I'm the original Brodie, I'm the Tyrone they clone. Feeling tempted to roll it up and get in my zone. Rhythmic tones, frequencies hitting pyramid domes can lift up only through sound, and that's the shit that I'm on. Cryptic and shit in my prose as I'm digmatizing a pro. A snake charmer, I'm told. But mine is errands, run some errands, ho, go iron some clothes. Think it's a parent who's the parent, and I shine in my role. It's oddy-dotty, lottie-dotty, I'm a party on my own. Copper hottie, and she's acting naughty, she's up in the zone. I'm off some shotties, and I'm talking potty, trying to get it done. If this was 1973, I would've put you on a stroll. In 1993, I would have you on the pole, but we've evolved. I like women with degrees and some goals, getting Z's at a decent hour when she make it home. No disease, keep that pussy clean, take care of them toes. She getting money, so all this shit she can do it on her own. Hit the gym, take your medicine, do your yoga poses. Here's a way that you can eat to feel full and fit them clothes. Call me late so we can pray and search the scriptures to be whole. I'm a fixture in your life that's hard to replace when I'm gone. So weigh your words before you end up sitting waiting at the phone. Yeah, I'm patient, but the way I am, I'm living by a code. Let her know that dick ain't free, it costs a fee to get infold. Yeah, I need something to hold. What's the story you compose? I'ma flip it. Don't you sell that pussy, let's go open up a business. Think I'm kidding, most are amazed at degrees in which I'm bold. But Bitch, gotta be patient, be honest, do what you told. I see the innocence within the darkness in your soul, and with privilege present you with the way that you can mold to our benefit, cause best believe not only for your own. I ain't limited by their doctrines on the ways that things should go. I would rather just be honest with the way that I propose. But when I touch your soul, everything I say is gold. Can't wipe if she ain't solid, if you got somewhere to go. Can't be rocking with a mold. Gotta know what's your role. Does she surrender and follow you even if she doesn't know? Is she swallowing the seed that you were dropping in a dome? Are you watering and anchoring that shit with every O? Classic conditions and thinking of ways to make the ship grows without contradicting the principles and ways that you've shown. Does she appreciate rewards you give for when she's hitting goals? Does she know and can articulate the program in our role? Does she eagerly anticipate the feeling of the pole? Does she turn into a little girl around you like she's home? Adi Dottie got some game for you to take it to the hole. Coach Brodie is the name, you gotta pay me. If there's one thing I know, that job ass turkey better have my motherfucking butter. You must have been mountain climbing, how you peeking on my interest. Gotta give you credit, I ain't think you really existed. Now you're near my heart, standing at the entrance. I went for a walk, but I'm staring from a distance. Rare that I felt I ain't care. If I get to hit your brown skin's unfair. Melanated misfit, elevated heart, way more than just a thick chick. My mind's been heavy, weighs more than a big bench. Pressed for the chance that I could wrap it in my arms. I wonder how it feels to be in love. I'm alone, they've been in love in a minute. I don't know if this is it, and it's probably not, but I'm definitely charmed. I feel at peace when we talking, so I try to do it often. You see the way I'm moving, so you probably write me off. Discipline, you're a Will Smith, from jaded to your option. But when I'm feeling Willow, you can make me feel awesome.
I wonder how it feels when you love. I wonder how it feels when you hug. I wonder how it feels. I wonder how it feels. I wonder how it feels when you love. I wonder how it feels when you hug. I wonder how it feels. I wonder how it feels. Yeah. I wonder how it feels. I wonder how it feels. I wonder how it feels. To have that love, that doctor feeling gotta heal.
I dare to query as I stare in this metal glare. If you really care, would you go for it? The slow pace was foretold. I could be more bold. I gaze and pour toes into your soul. More toes would pray for a taste and more so that thing they call love. Yeah. What have I thought of? A place in your globe. You got a shape you can't fake with wardrobe. My mind could race with you. Sane, a bolt of lightning could strike me twice if I hold the same significance in your mind. But still there's fault lines on both sides. Earthquakes that halt us. I can't pretend. I think that you're awesome. I'm still your friend if us ain't an option. But I still wonder how it feel to love you without some.
Hey, what's good, y'all? What's good, y'all?
Yo, what's up, man? Happy Friday.
Man, happy Friday, man. And I've been looking forward to having a show with you for a minute now, man.
100.
Because
Um,
out of all the men I know who live this Dom lifestyle, I think you probably the one I spent the most time talking to.
Indeed, man. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, my brother.
So, man, I think and also, are you a psychiatrist or a psychologist?
More closely aligned with psychologists. Basically how I describe it is a clinical. I'm a clinician. I'm a clinician. So if we want to be technical, I have my license, clinical social work degree, but primarily my work aligns in the behavioral clinician realm, and then also have my private practice.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing, man. And I think it's very appropriate for the subject matter of this particular collaboration because we're getting deep into some psychology stuff here, getting deep into some behavioral psychology, getting deep into some Jungian psychology. I know we were having a conversation the other day where we were discussing some Pavlovian psychology, some Jungian psychology, a little bit of some Freud. And to have one thing I noticed is a lot of DOMs tend to be pretty heavily entrenched in some field of psychological study.
Mm, mm. And it makes sense, because what we do is at least the 24/7 DOMs. A lot of what we do is mental and not necessarily the physical. Of course, the physical is there; it's important. Um, but I describe myself in the lifestyle realm as mental first. Um, Protocols is my primary kink that most people understand, and that has to do with mainly mental um, execution.
I love the protocols. I was already doing some form of protocols on my own, but conversations with you are really what hammered in protocols for me. Like your
Mm,
tuck-ins, that's a beautiful thing, man. Your tuck-ins,
thank you,
uh,
brother.
yeah, I love that, man.
And I want to give a shout out to you. These back chat streets, as I call it, they can be brutal. But I noticed that you stay consistent. 10 toes down. You've gotten a lot of criticism. Especially one of those that's been persistent, that your age. But I will say that just observing you do your thing. You stay 10 toes down. And as it relates to the knowledge don't have an age to it. So I just want to make sure I give you, make sure I say that, my brother.
Man, I appreciate that, man. I remember when I first started joining the back chats, you were the person who introduced me to the back chats. But I remember when I first joined Ampu, they was like, he ain't gonna last 3 days. Who the fuck y'all talking about? I'm Coach Brodie. I let my nuts hang everywhere. Same nigga everywhere I go.
Indeed. These back chats, what has it been like, what, 2 years now?
I think it's
Uh,
been 2 years now.
Black back chats can be brutal, you know what I'm saying? But I do think the back chats are uh at least from my standpoint, a good ground for reality testing. There's a lot of potential in the back chats. That's one of the reasons I stay in the back chats, as much as I do. Um, but at the same time, just like with anything, uh, we got to pace ourselves, because if you focus on one thing too much, it'll be detrimental. So I think, and I could be wrong, but I think you've done a good job of pacing yourself this year.
Yeah, this year I was like towards the end of last year, I was going through shit, so I wasn't on here as much. But it's easy for people to like. I've seen people get consumed by the back chat.
Hmm.
I've seen it happen, and it's like it's sad to see, but it happens to people. You know what I mean? Because we're in a day and age where social interaction in person is not as common as it used to be. Plus, it's like when you go on the internet, you can find people who have some adjacent alignment with certain things that you're into and believe. So rather than finding people and then seeing if they're into things you're into, you can just find people who are into things that you're into already, but they may just be far away. I have no problem with that though either, because especially when you're working, sometimes you get on the back chat when you're like, you might be at work. Like I work night shift at Walmart. When you work night shift at Walmart, this is one of those things where sometimes you just be on the phone doing stuff like that. But for me, I'll always look at the back chat from a standpoint of potential as well. Like I look at what people's different gifts and talents are, no matter where I go, and think of how can they benefit me and how can I benefit them. And I think that's part of this shadow work that we're talking about, right? Because most people see having ulterior motives as being inherently insidious and malicious. And I'm like, no, I believe that's just being intentional. You can think in a way where you have ulterior motives, but if those ulterior motives are mutually beneficial, I don't see anything morally incorrect with that.
And indeed, it's so there's nuances. There's ulterior motives of. All right, so we talk about which role are you in? Are you dom, or are you sub, or is this vanilla? Are you presenting one thing but meaning another? Now that's the issue I have with when people use the term ulterior motives. But again, we talking about nuances here.
Yeah, I think a big part of my shadow work came from simply not wanting to be a duplicitous individual, right? Like coming from a gospel background, a gospel rap background, being very heavily entrenched in my religion, I recognized that through the suppression of my sexuality, that it led to me beginning to develop certain duplicitous mentalities. And I didn't act on them so much at the time, but I recognized how much strain it put on myself as an individual. And when I recognized that, it was around 2016. And when I recognized that, I started going through my process of shadow work, and it really took place through a lot of my biblical studies. Like a lot of people wouldn't think, how do you get it? Like, they'll be like, how do you get into BDSM from Christianity? And it's like, one, I'm still a Christian, but two, I was reading Romans 5, Romans 7 through 8. I was reading certain scriptures that was talking about how the law came so that sin would abound, and how, Paul would talk about how I do the things I don't want to do, I do, and the things I don't want to do, things I want to do, I don't do. When I do good, evil is always present. When I do evil, good is always present. And he was just in a rut. And to me, what this represented was the psychological phenomenon called psychological reactance. It's reactance theory. And to me, the answer to reactance theory is to dive deep into your shadow and to integrate that with your ego. And when I say integrate that with your ego, what I'm particularly discussing is to take your more base desires, to take your more egoistic desires, to take your more shadowy desires, and to negotiate those with your morals and your principles and your values, and then to take these integrated values with your shadow, and then to put those into your persona. So we're talking about Jungian psychology. It typically goes from the top down. It goes persona, then it goes ego, then it goes shadow, then it goes anima, animus, then it goes the self. And I have my own particular brand of how I do shadow work, because I started it before I even knew that much about Jungian psychology. It was a natural progression for me. So other people might do it in a different manner, but for me, I decided to go the route of taking my ego and my shadow and to integrate those, right? And then to take my integrated ego with my shadow and then to make that my persona, right?
All right.
That way I'd have the opportunity to protect myself. And then through my experiences with women, through my experiences with reality, to be able to take my perception of women and my perception of reality to be influenced by my experiences operating out of my ego, to see the truth of what my actual competency, security, and compatibility is, and then to go back behind it, to allow that to influence my anima, and then after doing that on a consistent enough basis to see what my actual competency level is, to integrate myself back into it. So it protects the inner child, it protects the self, and then you also get to see how actually competent you are. And what this does is it helps integrate the natural narcissism and dark triad traits that are within an individual, so that it separates you from grandiosity and it brings you to a place of reality.
Indeed, indeed. So the I'm curious, even though we talked about this before, but I'm curious as to, and it probably take a long time, but if you can give the short version of how you were able to integrate those. But before you get into it, um, we was talking the other day about how I view things as relates to um, ego psychology, and what it is, it kind of it meshes with me the most, and that is the concept of sublimation. And is basically something that we're gonna say is on the lines of shadow, but not always the case, but something that is socially unacceptable, but you understand with your anima, or your basically uh, your inner animalistic part of you, but you are able to find a way to express that in a way that's socially acceptable. That's called sublimation. I use the example of boxing all the time. When, if you like to fight, but you fight on the street, you might catch some charges. However, if you discover a boxing gym, you discover, and you may even come to have a coach. That coach will train you, and if you have the willingness, the passion to learn, to get better, it may very well be possible for you to make money off of it, while getting that animalistic uh, need of yourself to, and again, it's socially acceptable. It's kind of crazy, and that's one of the reason I say all the time with BDSM in particular. It is the vehicle for most humans to be their most naturalistic selves. I strongly believe that. I observe it all the time. There's so many people that I've come across that they, they have this, I guess, for lack of a better term, weird kink, to a vanilla, or something that may be left field for most people. But however, if they understand about BDSM, and then, and you and I, we differ, on the consent area, and we can talk about that later. But as long as you have that consent, you can exercise these things in a way that's effective for you both.
I definitely agree. I think what you're discussing right there. Now, I've researched into sublimation before, but I didn't get too deep into it. So your idea of sublimation is very similar to my idea of shadow work.
Mhm.
But my idea of shadow work is different from a lot of other Jungian psychologists when it comes to shadow work. So I think in terms of Freudian psychology, the father of modern psychology, we would be discussing the id, right? And
Mhm.
I've done that because I'm a boxer, right? Like I was an undefeated amateur boxer, and I became a boxing, like the assistant boxing coach in my local boxing gym at 19 years old. And like from a very young age, I spent a lot of time dealing with bullies, dealing with duplicitous and deceptive individuals, dealing with people who would try to take advantage of me. And as a young child, oftentimes adults wouldn't take up for me. And in the rare instances that they did, it would lead to shame from my peers. So I just learned to start fighting everybody, right?
Mhm.
Like back when I was in elementary school, my father used to pick me up from the Boys and Girls Club in North Florence, South Carolina, every single week for fighting in the Boys and Girls Club. And when I got into boxing, it was at a very tumultuous time in my life because it was when it was finally confirmed for me. I was about 14, 15 years old. My mother confirmed for me that she was addicted to drugs. And my father, in regular black father fashion, we didn't have a conversation about it. We didn't talk about the fact that my mother was hooked on drugs, right? I was planning to go see my mother that summer. We didn't talk about it. Well, you know what he did? He did two things. He got me a puppy and he put me in boxing. Right?
Mm.
So boxing was therapeutic for me. And I always loved the fact that I could find an acceptable outlet for my aggression. So through boxing, I used to always post on Facebook, on my original Facebook page, it got taken down, that boxing is therapy for me. So
Mm.
for me, like, I would see people say things like a lack of remorse for hurting people is a symptom of having antisocial social personality disorder. And I don't believe I actually have antisocial personality disorder, but I do have tendencies that lean towards that because I'm a naturally aggressive individual. So it was one of those things where I could go into a boxing gym and I could spar, or I could go to a boxing club on an amateur boxing event day and I could have a match with someone and I could exercise my desire to dominate and to compete and to hurt another individual, but it would be socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And having these type of outlets made it possible for me to be myself, because the truth is that we need these attributes as human beings. If it weren't for these attributes of being able to emotionally separate ourselves from hurting others and to be remorseless, then no one would be able to go to war and then to come back and not be too heavily emotionally affected by what they did and what they saw during times of war to be able to live a balanced life when they come back from being in war. These are very important attributes.
Yes, yes, and that you hit the nail on the head there. And see, that's where I differ from my colleagues in that what you describe as relates to antisocial behavior. Now they're talking about outside of a socially acceptable setting, but just like you just laid out, those attributes are important in war. And not to get too deep into it, it looks like we're about to have to pull on those instincts again, and hopefully we won't be too far on the side of, we just going to say, uh, civility and politically correctness, that all those innate animalistic traits, and the soldiers of our community or our society, um, it will be too far um, in between to where we don't have enough to defend ourselves. But but that's the thing. Too many in our field, they don't recognize, or they don't study sublimation, um, to to for people like yourself. They wouldn't see your boxing outlet as effective. They would, I guess they would be blind to it. Because, are you still a antisocial personality because you like to hurt? Um, According to them, yes. But if they actually study sublimation, they will say no. Because you properly channeled, um, well, through the way of your father, you took to it. Now you could have chose. Now, if you would have chose to not train, to not dive into the boxing area, and will stay outside of the boxing gym and just fought whomever, then I could see them justifying saying antisocial personality disorder. But the only difference is you got in the gym and you decided to make that your focus, in terms of the training, the sparring, the matches. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And you know what? I think one thing that benefits to this conversation is that I'm very similar to my father. So my father is a man who I have more respect for any person I have respect for in this entire world, right? Like, my father is an amazing man. Like, when I say my father is an amazing man, my father is an amazing man. And it's one of those things where I'm just a smaller version of him. Like, I'm about 5'9", 5'10". My father like 6 foot. He's just a bigger version of me. And me and him have very similar attributes. We have opposite signs. I'm a Scorpio. He's a Taurus. But you know, those are opposites, but opposites typically have a lot of similarities. And I knew not to play with that nigga. You know what I mean? So I could have been out in the streets. I could have been doing certain things, but I knew if I wanted to join a gang or to do some dumb shit like that, he would have pulled up with his gun. He probably would have pistol whipped me and everybody out there. So I'm like, I wasn't about to play with that nigga. I wasn't gonna do it. You know what I mean? So I was like, you know what? I got to take what avenues are afforded to me.
There we go. And I respect it, man. And you know that, and that's a aspect of masculinity that we don't really talk about. You know, it is to make a long story short. It was a long time that masculinity was thought of as, and I'm talking about recent times, thought of as bad. You know, toxic, all of those things. But thankfully, you know, because more men are speaking up, and also I believe women are seeing what happens when you totally repress masculinity, what occurs, you know. So I think the cat is out the bag as far as that is goes. You know, we're not going back in the bottle, you know, as on a macro level, you know. So that's what's up, man. You know, men are important.
Man, listen, I remember growing up when I was like, I've been suspended for fighting 10 times while I was in like grade school, right?
Mhm.
And one thing I appreciate about my father is that my father always knew that I was different, right? So my father knew that people would try to bully me or mess with me. So if I disrespected teachers, my father would beat my ass, right?
Mhm.
But if I got into a fight at school, my father would never punish me for getting into a fight at school.
Mm. Mm.
Like, this is some real masculinity stuff. My father grew up in the 70s, right? So growing up in the 70s, early 80s, if him or my uncle came home crying because they got bullied or fought somebody, my grandmother would make them go out and fight again.
Yes. Yes.
To me, I personally believe they need to bring bullying back.
Mm.
I'm so glad that people attempted to bully me. I'm not saying they were successful, but they attempted to. It really adds color to your character, because if it wasn't for people attempting to bully me, I wouldn't be the man that I am today. Because if you ever look at my album cover that I'm not sure if I sent it to you or not. It's on the thumbnail, or it's on the backdrop of this. It has a honey badger on this. A woman who I was in a relationship with for 10 years. I was having a conversation with her sometime towards the end of last year, and we were having a conversation about spirit animals, right? And I was saying, like, what would you think my spirit animal would be? And she said, I would think your spirit animal would be a honey badger. And I went down a rabbit hole of a bunch of honey badger videos, and I'm like, that sounds like me, because I'm a very tenacious, audacious individual, and that's my personality. I'm a go-getter. If I want it, I go get it, and I don't care what anybody else has to say about it. That's just who I am, and I like that about myself.
I will say the honey badger is definitely a ferocious animal. I'm you know, one thing about me, I love nature, and that, man, the honey badger is not only ferocious, but he's intelligent. And he's not that big, but it don't matter. So that's what's up, man.
And like, when I was thinking about the honey badger, like during the process of this, and I have a song on my project called Prayer Eternus, right? That's a concept from Jungian psychology, which is basically another word for Peter Pan syndrome, right? And one thing I think about when it comes to the honey badger is that the honey badger will get bit by snakes, right? Because they hunt venomous snakes like black mambas and cobras, and they'll fight anything. A honey badger has a certain resistance built up towards venomous animals, right? So they'll get bit and they'll still kill what they're killing, but they'll get bit and then they'll fall asleep for a couple of hours, and then they'll wake up and then keep moving as if nothing happened. And that reminds me of myself, because there's been times in my life where I would get bit by snake individuals, right? Where they would have very duplicitous mentalities, or let's say I would, and this is not the best thing to say, but let's say I'd find myself in situations where the only way that I could truly empathize with the other individuals would it be under the influence of drugs or alcohol? Not hard drugs, but just like, smoking some weed, drinking some liquor, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And those experiences, I wrote my song Prayer Eternus about that. And also, like, one thing people oftentimes don't talk about is sex addiction within Black men, hypersexuality. I'm not even truly beyond that. I'm still a hypersexual Black man. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I don't see that as completely wrong or bad, but I also see the pitfalls that can come with it.
Right. Right.
And through my experiences being a hypersexual Black man, it's like sometimes I'll have experiences that may hurt me very deeply, but then I might drink a little bit, then take a nap, and then I'll have a dream when I'm taking a nap, and that dream will shed light on my experiences in a way where I can better process and understand them. And then I'll wake up in a different mood, and that really reminds me of how honey badgers are when it comes to getting bit by venomous snakes and then waking up and then just keeping on with their day.
Mm-hmm. And to use that metaphor with Black men, I would say that on the macro level, we all need to have some of that, at least to a certain degree, to self-improve to the point where things, life gonna happen, life stuff is gonna happen, but to see that it happened, feel it, but not stay there. That's the whole thing. And but the thing is, you got to remove that bitten area first. You can't just let the snake bite just be on you, right? You got to get it off first, take that nap, and then keep it moving.
Yeah, I bite back. That's one thing about me. Some people don't like that about me, but I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's the truth of the matter. You seen how I can be in the back chat sometimes. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
you remember the Buffalo Soldier thing?
No, refresh my memory.
So I remember when we were having our beefs in the back chat, and I don't know what it is, but it would be the more rotund women in the back chat who would have an issue with things that I would say. And I would try to communicate with them healthily for a little while. But as they kept going with the shaming tactics, right?
Mm.
With the what's the word that Kevin Samuels used for it?
Sign language.
They would keep going with the sign language, and then I would just, after a while, I would give them a couple warnings, and then I would start going in, right? And I would just start going in. And I remember one time I got to the point where anytime they said something I ain't like, I would get in there, and anytime they say something I ain't like, I would just put a voice clip in there. I'd be Buffalo Soldier, boy yo, boy yo.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, man. Man, them days were brutal, man. Them days was brutal. It was a trip.
There was some brutal days in the back chat, but man, we have fun with it, man. But
Mm-hmm.
I think people got to understand there's a lot of stuff that went through before we actually got to that point where things got that brutal. It didn't start off that way,
Right.
but for me, I'm just the type of person where I'm going to communicate to people a couple of times. Then after I communicate a couple of times about what I think is acceptable versus not acceptable when it comes to what's healthy communication, then all the gloves is off and I'm going for the jugular.
And that's fair. That's fair because especially for someone who, for those of us who can have healthy, effective communication, right? And of course, everyone is not. I'm not gonna say not capable. I do believe everyone is capable, but if someone is continuously communicating to you in an aggressive manner, it is not healthy for you to continue to respond in an assertive manner. Some of us continue to do it, but even myself, I have communicated in an aggressive manner, which that's a whole nother story, but it's the truth. Because at some point, you got to bite back, and that's just what that is. So, I don't fault you or anybody else, with that.
You know that reminds me of? It's a video I got to make, right? And it's a wild video, but it's a video about conditional masculinity, right? Because I know we oftentimes have a conversation about conditional submission or conditional femininity and things like that. But you know, my ideology is about the sexual polarity quadrant. The sexual polarity quadrant has all four aspects in it. So how I look at it is like this. I don't really see a problem with conditional masculinity. I'm gonna be honest with you, because conditional masculinity is like, let's say we're talking about the concept of core polarity, right? Do you know, have we ever had a conversation about core polarity?
We have.
So core polarity is saying that you have one space in the quadrant that you more closely gravitate to, whether that's masculine, feminine, dominant, or submissive, right?
Mhm.
If you are primarily dominant, then in the high cup space between the social, the sexual, the self-preservation level, you will be in masculine dominance. But if you reach a low cup space, then you'll be in feminine dominance. And feminine dominance is where you're going to be more so aggressive, more so passive aggressive, or where you're going to be more so manipulative or aggressive, right? So for me, I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, because if you communicate to somebody what your triggers are and they don't respect that, I believe you have every right to come at them with full force.
Right. Right.
That's me personally. Some people may not agree with that. Some people say, "Oh, your character is your character." I'm like, no. If you're in a situation where things are not just, where people are not carrying things in a proper manner, I believe you have every right to come at somebody with full force. That's my personal belief.
Understood. And so on that point, I would say this, because the situations are different, individuals are different. Um, but I will say that if someone is coming at you, all right, so I'm gonna put it in violence terms, physical violence. So if someone is poking you, with their finger, I don't think it's proportional. I'm not saying that you do this. I
You're
don't
talking about
think it's
proportional.
I don't think it's proportional for that person to pull out a gun and shoot them, right?
I agree.
Um, but if that person is coming at you with a knife, in an aggressive way, and you understand that, hopefully you got the time to do this, but you probably won't. But anyway, they trying to stab you with a knife, and that is gonna come for your organs, and kill you. So yeah, taking out a gun, uh, bomb, going nuclear, that's appropriate. Um, is some people, some people believe that because they're poking you, then I have a right to shoot you because look, why are you touching me? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would be overkill. That would be overkill. And I think this brings us to a good topic point, right? And this is something we were talking about the other day, right? Which is validational loops, right?
Mhm.
Hacking validational loops. I think that most people are not on a level to where it's truly attainable for them to be their idea of truly healthy, right? Because, oftentimes you and me would have conversations revolving around the topic of what I consider sexual polarity, right?
Mhm.
And my idea of sexual polarity has four cup spaces, right? Yeah, the low cup space, the medium cup space, the high cup space, and the overflowing cup space. Most people are not in a position in their lives where they're even in a high cup space, but they idealize the overflowing cup space. A particular belief that I have is that you can't overpower an unhealthy attachment with a healthy relationship or a healthy dynamic unless the person themselves becomes healthy. And this is where I believe that BDSM is truly a powerful thing in a cheat code, because when we understand BDSM, this is about taking what makes up an unhealthy attachment and using it in a way that hacks the validational loops so that you can create positive feedback loops that give an individual the opportunity to reach a healthy place.
Mhm.
I think that's very important. Many people overlook that. Many people will go from being in a low cup space to assuming that the next step is to be in the overflowing cup space, and it doesn't work like that.
All right, so I understand what you're saying, but for the audience, can you give an example of that?
So low cup spaces would be masculine, feminine, masculine submissive and feminine dominant. Masculine submissive is directly transactional, right? Feminine dominant is manipulative. Think about it like the dismissive avoidant and the insecure attachment style. Or think about it like the narcissistic codependent paradigm. Narcissism and codependency are two sides of the same coin. Then you have the middle cup space, which is what I consider the masculine submissive exercise and self-control, right? Now, this is oftentimes going to work off of covert contracts. And if you're able to stay in the middle cup space, then if someone meets the standards of your covert contract, then you could pretend to be integrated even though you're not. And if someone doesn't meet up to the covert contracts, then that's where you will either drop into a low cup space or you will leave them alone, right? And then we have the high cup space, which is going to be masculine dominant or feminine submissive. Masculine dominant is where you focus on your intrinsic desirability and your process, your program, your structure. Feminine submissiveness is when you're focused on your desire for the individual. It's masculine security versus feminine security. And then the overflowing cup space is what people consider healthy communication or healthy relationships. This is something that flows through having a combination of both masculine and feminine security. So you have the integrated masculine, the integrated feminine, and then you have the masculine dominant exercise and self-control. My ideology is not really based around saying that everybody should be integrated, because I believe there's steps to get to before you get there, right? So if you're in a low cup space or a middle cup space, the next step is to get to a high cup space. If you're in a high cup space, then you want to deal with an individual consistently enough through the high cup space to transition into integrated. Right? That's how I view things.
Indeed. So I'm trying to put it in, because see that your quadrant that can be applied to everyone, vanilla or BDSM. But I'm trying to think of an example of BDSM, of how this vehicle would be helpful in using that example.
I'll break it down for you, right? So if you're a player, right? And when I say player, it means different things, because I came up listening to Alan Roger Curry, rest in peace to Alan Roger Curry. And his idea of a player is different than most people's idea of a player. Because I also grew up watching Bill Bellamy's How to Be a Player, and that was about lying to women. So if you have to lie, or you have to force women and coerce them, or you have to manipulate them in a way where they don't know what's going on, then this would be considered feminine dominant. Mm-hmm. That would be feminine dominant, right? So that's a dominant mindset. Now, understand that men and women have flipped dominant and submissive egos. We all have all of them, but it's flipped for men and women. So a man, his dominant ego is going to be about gaining control and sexual access. For a woman, her dominant ego is going to be about gaining non-sexual access, but also about being viewed as innocent and being viewed as faultless. So we have to understand that these things are different. So for me, and this is interesting, I don't know if we talked about this before, but when I talk about my concept of transitional dating really works from starting at the bottom level of masculine dominance, which would pretty much be being a service top, right? Mm-hmm. So it goes service top, then dom, then from dom, you may go into master, or you may go into daddy dom. So a daddy dom would be like the integrated masculine, and a master would be like a masculine dominant exercise and self-control. So to me, I don't believe in most people's idea of healthy relationships and healthy dating. I don't believe in that. To me, going on dates and being in a relationship with a woman would simply be role play. To me, the real relationship is the dom sub dynamic.
Understood. So to one of your points, I don't believe in not telling the truth. I don't believe in lying to women. That to me, that's nonsense. Right. So in that lens, that's feminine dominant, right? Manipulation. My thing is, and I've gotten I guess you could call it rejection, or pushback for keeping it real. Like, look, this is what it is. This is what I expect. This is my program. And if you cannot deal with my program, all right, peace out. Don't slam the door on your way out. You know what I'm saying? But however, by sticking to my program, I'm not saying that, all of my relationships have been A1, right? Because, there's other elements that come to play even after a woman um, communicates and demonstrates that she's on your program. But for me, for a man, for me developing my program, and it took a while for it to do. It may seem simple to most. By having that program solid, it's a good effective vetting tool as well. Because if a woman continues to say, okay, this, sure, that, it's going to annoy the shit out of me. Get out my damn face with that.
Yeah, it's yes sir over in this bitch. Hey, you know
Yeah.
what? Hey, you know what? I think we got to understand too is the concept of safety, right? I think that when you're masculine dominant, your program is where you find safety through. When you're feminine submissive, you find safety through how you interact with your dominant. So it's a little bit different. And so as a masculine dominant, you set the frame of the relationship. You set the frame of how you interact with the woman. And when you set that frame is where you find your safety. So you're not seeking to find safety within the woman. But
Right.
but there's women who are masculine dominant too. I'm not going to say that there aren't any. But one thing I'd like you to do real quick is to tell me some of your history of how you got into BDSM.
Understood. So it was, I'd say, a long road, but I'll try to sum it up. So early on, and I'm talking what, 12, 13, more specifically, seventh grade year going into the eighth grade year. So I was playing football. So, but it was that summer. So as you know, during the summer, there's, football practice and, stuff like that. But this particular time, I was just at home, and there was a rumor maybe a week or two prior to this incident occurring. It was a rumor that it was some girls going around jumping boys, pulling their pants down, stuff like this. So I was home this particular day, and make a long story short, they came to my house, and so they was trying to, I opened the door. They were trying to push into my crib. I showed them that they couldn't get into my crib. By it was like what, maybe 30 minutes to an hour. In which I showed them like, look, you ain't getting in here unless I let you in here. But I decided, I remember this. I decided to let them in to see what they were going to do. And then once they, and again, we going way back. We talking about the planting the seeds. So they were, I guess doing what they were doing, trying to pull my pants down. I wasn't going. What I'm saying, I wasn't going. But it took them, about an hour or so. But anyway, I decided to let them, do some freaky things, to me, what I'm saying, put their butt in my face. I like that type of shit. What I'm saying? I was a freaky little boy, what I'm saying? And so, and it's crazy, one of my good friends in the neighborhood had came over later that day, and he told him what had occurred, and he was making comments like, man, you a freak, dude, what I'm saying? Because he understands that I let them do that, right? And we had communications years down the line, and he would say, man, that was the day that you became a freak, what I'm saying? So that was the seeds planted. Fast forward to college, or well, around the time where I say 18 to 20, there was so I went off to college, and but back at home, there's a couple things that occurred. back at home in our neighborhood, there was it was basically what it was. We come to find out later, it was a swingers party. So across the street from my best friend's house, they back then there were Yahoo groups, and they would have these swinger parties, and they would let us in. Yes, we were underage, and that's the first time I've seen uh, black people have, we're just gonna say, alternative lifestyle. I saw a man rubbing on a woman's feet. Of course, we saw oral reciprocation to and for it was fascinating to me. It was like, wow. And we dive right into it. um Along that same period of time, I came across the you that incident. um Piqued my curiosity. I started diving into more the Yahoo groups, and I came across a a black group, and that person who she is a female dominant by the name of Lady D, out of Atlanta. And um and I got an invite to go up there to at this time. Just to put it in context, I was going to school in Albany, Georgia. That's South Georgia. That is closer to Valdosta than it is to Atlanta. But I lived in the east side of Atlanta as far as growing up. But going back to it, I got this invite, and when I went there, I saw, even though I began to do research, about protocols, about fundamentals of BDSM, the power exchange. For the first time, I was able to see it. I was able to see protocols in action. I saw, um, subs only being able to speak one word, but still being accommodating. I saw the um, the people laying at their dom's feet. I saw the order that um, that it was required to have an effective meeting. It was, to me, it was at that moment I was like, I'm not looking back. Even though I met someone and then decided to get into a vanilla relationship after that, but at that moment during that time period, seeing that, it was beautiful to me. That was peace. That was not chaos to me. I can, I guess in the vanilla world, people, you know, may have looked at that as, man, what's wrong with these people? But for me, that was like I found my tribe.
I can understand that. That's a beautiful story, to be honest with you, because like I think about my progression into the BDSM world, and a lot of it took place through me troubleshooting issues I was having in a relationship. Like I had a relationship, like, because you and me, we talk about blue pill shawty, right?
Hmm.
I had a relationship started when I was 17 years old, right?
Hmm.
That situation didn't end till I was 28. I'm 28 now, right?
Hmm.
And it was a situation where through troubleshooting with that relationship, I began to recognize the animus, right? And I also began to recognize the shadow. And through my experiences, I started recognizing how a woman may attempt to use her animus or her social programming to manipulate you, right? Out of certain levels of sexual access. So I would learn to reverse that manipulation when it would occur. And this would end up with me being in a lot of CNC relationship dynamics. And then eventually I ended up entering into the hookup culture world. And within the hookup culture world, I would just be honest about what I wanted and what I was looking for. And through that process of knowing what I wanted and what I was looking for, you know, like I said, I came up a lot listening to like Alan Roger Curry. I believe in being very direct about my intentions. So through my experiences, it would just naturally evolve into dom sub dynamics with women I would interact with. It wouldn't even be something where I knew I was in BDSM at first. It's just I like to dominate women. That's just kind of how I am. And through that journey, through that process, I realized that I can just use the verbiage of BDSM to express what I naturally desire to get into when it comes to dealing with women. So it would be things like having protocols. It would be things like, I like me personally, I've never taken a woman out on a date uh, in order to have casual sex with her. I've never done this before, right?
Mhm.
Like a lot of that was being respectful to my relationship as a primary partner, but at the same time, it was because for me, I see the foundation is like, okay, is the foundation going to be the desire, or is the foundation going to be trying to succumb and submit myself to this woman's social programming? So in my experiences, I just ended up naturally just gravitating towards the BDSM lifestyle. And once I realized this is what I liked, this became the norm for me, right? And through this becoming the norm, it's like, I don't really want to deal with a woman unless this is something that takes place within it. The BDSM dynamic, you know, when I first got into BDSM, I didn't even know this is what it was at the time, but I got into BDSM as a brat tamer. So because of my experiences dealing with Blue Pill Shawty, I became so in tune and accustomed to the manipulation tactics of women that I would be able to circumvent these manipulation tactics. And through circumventing these manipulation tactics, they would get very turned on and be willing to do whatever I told them to do. And this is what led to me becoming a brat tamer and a service top that eventually led into me being a dom, a daddy dom, and a master.
Man, I tell you, man, the brat taming thing, that takes a lot of patience and perseverance, because that all right, so everybody knows, I don't deal with brats on an intimate level. Um, but as we know, a lot of women, they have brat tendencies. Um, and so being able to stand on your square and having the ability to levy consequences, that's essential. That is another. So I talked about the seeds of what led me into BDSM, but once I got my foothold, I saw that basically having the ability, just simply, and there's more to it, but simply having the ability to levy consequences, and the consequences, I'm not talking about balling your fist, hitting a woman, slapping a woman. No, I'm not talking about none of that. But taking away things that they enjoy, uh, delivering pain, whatever the case may be, to correct the behavior outside of just leaving, I don't see any other way. Now I will say this, and I thought about this in the past couple days. The archetype of the daddy dom, for the longest time, I rejected that part of me for the longest time. Coming up, um, in BDSM, practicing it. I actively tried to keep that away. Why? Because I had the perception that being a daddy dom is soft, right?
You know what?
Them some soft ass niggas, they just ignorance, right? You know what I'm saying? But what and this is another thing that has been consistent with my journey. I call my journey with TCF, was started in 2014, and actually this is the 10th year of
Hey,
the Chocolate
congratulations.
family. Thank you, brother. Thank you. And so, but throughout this journey, baby girl type of submissive have gravitated towards me, and through those experiences I don't know, it's like a magnet, right? Even though at one point I'm like, no more baby girls, no more littles. You know what I'm saying? Because you know the reasons why. You know they require a lot of attention. They require a lot of uh, care. All of that, right? Um, and but again, it's like a magnet. Even if I'm not seeking those types seem to be a magnet to me. And also, when it comes to those daddy dom attributes, you know, I do that. You know, I do
You are a caregiver.
in that in that aspect. You know, in terms of especially if they doing what they're supposed to do, right? I do like to reward. You know, so in the past couple days, I've been thinking about it. I'm finally embracing that aspect of my dominance.
You know what? That's very interesting because I'll say that for me personally, I understand exactly where you're coming from because I spent the last several years, and this is really a compromise, right? And that's why it was really an issue for me. I don't think I really have an issue with being a daddy dom, but my time in being a daddy dom was really a compromise with Blue Pill Shawty. You get what I'm saying? Like we'll talk about
Mm,
that, and
mm,
oftentimes that's what it is where you try to implement soft dominance and creating emotional safety in scenarios in which a woman's making bad decisions in order to is almost like you're trading safety for the control rather than the woman naturally desiring to be under your leadership. And I think that's what happens with a lot of soft doms and a lot of daddy noms. And it feels a little bit too much like scholastic or academic dominance rather than it being a more natural or primal, because I'm more of a primal dom, right? I'm more of a predator, and I'm also more of a degrader. And the thing about baby girls is oftentimes they are very sensitive, right? They're very insecure. And if you speak to them a certain way, it makes them feel unsafe. But it's like, I don't feel like you truly deserve these rewards unless you're willing to take the punishments.
right.
You get what I'm saying? So I understand what you're saying. Like I realize and I recognize that for myself, me being a daddy dom was more of a compromise. Because like you said about baby girls, uh, man, I was in a relationship for a long time, for a decade, with a woman who we didn't even, it wasn't even discussed that we were going to be in a BDSM relationship at first, right?
Mm,
I gravitated towards being in the BDSM while we were dealing with each other, but while gravitating towards BDSM while we were together, we just naturally gravitated towards me calling her baby girl and her calling me daddy. That's just how our relationship worked because she was age regressive, right?
mm,
So she was a little, and it was just one of those things where it the level of safety she wanted and desired out of the relationship was something that it didn't feel right or fair for me to give that level of safety for the
right.
decisions that she was
Or,
making.
or authentic, right? Because it's because it's almost like you're rewarding bad behavior, which we know that is a no. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I'm not saying I'll never be a daddy dom again, but I know right now that's not where I'm at right now. Like, cause I understand where you're coming from. Because the truth is, I'm more of an unhinged, dominant, deviant dominant who's a degrader. Like I'd rather take the role of a master or take the role of a standard issue dom rather than be a daddy dom. So when I made the decision to do that, I spent years in that relationship, but there was a certain level of submissiveness that I desired to receive that I'd very rarely receive. And that was something that would bother me, right? So
Mm.
I get what you're saying about your perspective on being a daddy dom. It's not something I'm against.
Are you breaking up? You still there? Hello? Hello?
Certain things. Sometimes this is just a way of trying to keep somebody around who may not want to be there that much.
Indeed. So with me, now make no mistake about it. Now, I do dive into my primal instincts. I do, um, 'cause for a long time, I mainly tapped into my primal instincts. Um, you know, I also enjoy the humiliation kink as well. It's um but I would say, the daddy dumb, part of me, I'm finally embracing that aspect of it. I'm not solely a daddy dumb, but it's there, and I'm not gonna continue to deny it.
I think that's a beautiful thing, man. I think for me personally, when I look at that, I say that that's really it's a beautiful thing. Because when I look at my project, and we got to talk about the music some too.
Mm,
Uh, in my project, what most of my project is really about is me sorting through and navigating through this world of overcoming the Madonna whore complex, right? So
mm,
when we're looking at Jungian psychology, there's 4 different stages of the anima, right? There's Eve, there's Helen, there's Mary, and there's Sophia. And to me, there's 2 ways of killing Mary. I call it killing Mary because Mary and Madonna are the same thing, right? So
mm,
one way is through I call the biology first approach. The biology first approach is simply when you overcome the idea that when you first meet a woman, that she's going to be an individual who truly sticks to her boundaries, her characters, her values, her standards, and you only deal with women who are immediately sexually receptive to you. But the second part of killing Mary is if you are a man who already has a long-term partner, being able to separate her from this idea, which is much more difficult than the doing it up front. So a lot of my project is about the Madonna whore complex and navigating through those different steps and those different stages.
mm,
And that's really what a lot of it is. So it really starts off with, Peach, that's more of a mission statement intro track, but then I go into Prayer Eternus. No, 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 not Prayer Eternus, but the Garden. And the Garden is basically from a period of my life where I was celibate, right? For religious reasons. And I was with a woman who was celibate. And I no longer believed that premarital sex was a sin. And when I no longer believed that premarital sex was a sin, I didn't immediately bring it up. One day the woman came to me and she was like, she felt insecure because I hadn't tried to sleep with her in a long time. And I'm like, I thought this was what we wasn't doing. But because
mm.
my beliefs had changed in between there, when she came to me and brought this idea up, I was in a position where when she brought it up, I decided to share with her what I had been studying. So during a time where I had really got deep into my studies about Christianity, about my religion, about my ideas about things, uh, I was in a position where I had gotten to a place where I no longer had sexual shame about my desires, right?
Mhm. Okay.
And when I got to this place where I no longer had religious sexual shame about my desires, I was ready to present to her how I wanted things to be. And one thing that began to recognize was the social programming. I began to recognize the animus, right? Because
Mhm.
there would be times where she would be willing to go against her beliefs and her values in different contexts. My love for her wasn't a good enough context. My desire wasn't a good enough context. Her desire wasn't a good enough context. But me being willing to walk away was a good enough context for her to be willing to contradict her own values. And this created a situation where at the end of Prayer Eternus, I have lines where I say, why is death so romantic? I'd rather spend my life with you. And when I talk about that in the song, what I'm really discussing is going from that place of having the moral high ground of saying, this is what I want, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, to saying, because I know that given enough time or given enough space and opportunity, that you're not going to stick to your values, I'm going to be willing to play the bad guy in your story so that you can break your values with me because the values that you're breaking don't break my values.
The thing is that's deep, my brother. And I want to give you, your props on congratulations on this project. Um, is dope. Is deep. And so I listen. I had the I don't have them broke down by songs, but I do have them break down by minute marks. And if you don't mind, when I say something on the minute mark, if you can let me know the name of that song and the concept where you were going with it, um, if that's cool with you.
Go ahead, go ahead.
All right. So the 8:40 to the 9 minute mark, you talk about the Topanga, and of course we know as relates to Topanga Was the boy? She was the character in Boy Meets World, which was one of my favorite shows, by the way.
It was my favorite show, hands down.
Mm. Understood. Can you because I remember we talked about this, in the back chats. Can you let the audience know what you mean by Topanga and what you were trying to convey in the song?
So when we're talking about Topanga, and that was on the song Puer Aeternis, that's the third track on the project, right? And what Topanga really represents is your idea of blue pill shawty. And what Topanga really represents is a woman with a father complex. I remember listening not only to Carl Jung, but also to Marie Louise von Franz. Marie Louise von Franz was the prize student of Carl Jung, and she would have videos where she would talk about the father complex and how a man who was anima possessed, right, would oftentimes cling towards a woman who represented stability. So a woman who would represent stability through her father complex would be a woman who presented the idea that she was somewhat sexually untouchable, right? And through this idea of being somewhat sexually untouchable, this would provide stability and security for the man, and then he would use the woman's security to motivate himself to do the things that are considered masculine within life. So when I say Boy Meets World, Topanga I thought I needed, what I'm really referring to is that relationship I was talking about where I was a daddy dom. It was a situation where I met the woman when I was 17 years old. It was before I had any game. I didn't have any game back then. All I knew was I didn't want to be in the friend zone. That's all I knew. So I was like, nah, I ain't about to be your little friend. We about to go on dates. We about to do all this other shit, right? But what I recognized later on in life was that creates pressure for the woman. When a woman's in an insecure space in her life, she can accept that. She likes the amount of attention she gets. But the Topanga isn't a woman who truly earns the attention that she gets, right? Because she's moving from a space of pre-qualification. So when you decide that you want to be in a position in your life where a woman in your life has to earn that qualification, it's either going to be in a situation where she messes up enough to feel like she has to earn it, or it's going to create this secondary type of Madonna whore complex where all the other women you deal with, they have to earn it, but she gets to maintain the position she has in your life, even if she isn't meeting up to the qualifications.
And you know what? The Topangas are often the attractive ones, ain't it?
Actually, I think that the Topangas are oftentimes the women who are right there on the baseline. I believe those are the women who are right there on the baseline of how attractive a woman needs to be. But oftentimes, not even the most attractive women that you deal with. Topangas are oftentimes the women who will trade masculine qualities to you in exchange for the fact that they aren't feminine enough for you.
Oh man, see, I'm good on the Topangas, bro. And you know what? That does put me in a mindset of blue pill shorties, right? Because with the blue pill shorties is those women who basically the last woman to either the first woman to violate that innocence, or the first woman that you put down your guard and she trampled over. You know what I'm saying? So, but moving forward, I'm not dealing with no Topanga because you got to earn everything over here. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, that kind of that got me triggered a bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I remember watching Boy Meets World back in the day, and this was in times in my life where I had a lot of fear, like a lot of approach anxiety, right? And the thing about a Topanga, well, we got to understand, we can't blame them for this, but the Topanga is the type of woman who's not truly in a high cup space. She's not really in the feminine submissive, because the feminine submissive doesn't truly operate on a foundation of loyalty, right? We got to understand this. Feminine submissive doesn't operate on loyalty to a person, it operates on loyalty to its feelings. So when you are a man who hasn't established yourself as who you are as a man in your life, and you meet a woman who is attached to you emotionally, right? Oftentimes there's going to be an emotional attachment. She may be loyal to that emotional attachment towards you, but with this emotional attachment towards you, it may not always fully extend into the sexual level the way you want it to, because that's her leverage in order to protect herself. So oftentimes, like I remember watching Boy Meets World, and I used to get turned on. Like I used to be very into watching Boy Meets World because I would see Corey being the nice guy, right? He would be the nice guy, the strong character, moral values, the masculine submissive man, the masculine submissive exercise and self-control. And through his experiences, he met Topanga, who was a woman who was more attractive than the typical women who may be actually interested in him, if any women were interested in him at all. But she was a woman who was able to be patient with his weakness. Right? That's the thing about the Topangas. Topangas are women who are going to be typically patient and receptive to a man being emotionally weak and not holding masculine frame. And what this does is it creates a platform where it can easily create a Madonna whore complex, because you can easily believe that because she's patient with your weakness and she may be loyal to you for a period of time, that this is a good woman, when really she may not be in a secure enough place to allow herself to trust her intuition, to trust her feminine desires. So she may be like a homebody, a type of woman who's going to stay out the mix. And because she stays out the mix, you put her on a pedestal. But when you put her on a pedestal, understand that once you get to a place where you pour a certain amount of energy into her, eventually she's going to get into the mix. And when she gets into the mix, whoever it is who she feels is the most dominant or the most masculine or the most sexually appealing, that's going to be who she's submissive with. Just because she's not submissive with you doesn't mean that she's not going to be submissive towards anyone.
Right. Which is now we go into the manosphere space, in that that's why I think it's best for men to be the best version of themselves as possible. Because, so here's the thing: if you get with a Topanga, and you are not fully developed, that's likely to occur in terms of, like you say, she is patient with you during that time period where you're masculine submissive, but eventually, what a lot of us understand is that woman is going to submit to the most dominant man, 8 times out of 10. But if that still occurs and you've made yourself the best version of yourself as possible, then it won't hurt as bad. You dig?
And I'll put it like this too. I think a big part of it is like this. There's a certain entitlement that gets built up, because when you make a habit of giving a woman free validation, right? As in you're giving her emotion, because it's not always about money. Some people think it's always about money. No, sometimes it's about emotional validation and social validation. So it could simply be that you're willing to be in a relationship with her publicly. It could simply be that you're willing to be patient with her mood swings, and it could simply be that you're willing to attempt to make her feel safe even when she's making bad decisions, and to not hold standards. And when this is the case, a woman is truly manipulating through her animus, her father complex. But this father complex, this animus, is not really fully indicative of who she is as a woman and what she's really willing to do. And what this does is it creates an environment to where the only ways to really make this work and to make this happen is if you're willing to walk away when she's still emotionally invested in you, and then to hold standards about what it will take to get to the place where she deserves the validation that she desires after you walk away. Or you're going to have to be willing to give her the space and the freedom and the safety to go pursue other men while you're still in her life, and to make her feel more safe than another man who may be getting more sexual validation than you are. And that's where we get into the integrated cup space, the integrated masculine. The integrated masculine can do this, but most men are not at that space.
Yep.
So that's where you see people who have been married for 5-10 years, and then their wife comes to them one day and says, I want an open relationship.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing, and then guess what? Here and in those instances, let's just say you say, okay, fine, we can have an open relationship. Um, and what I'm saying is, if that man makes that decision to be okay with that, and that man is doing whatever it is that he needs to do to be the best version of himself, and that woman decides to leave him, what I'm saying is, if that man, and it's not just financially, it's what you said, is um you know being giving out validation when earned, and the different things of self-improvement, and she still decides to leave. What I'm saying is, that man needs to be what will is likely that man will be, yeah, he's still going to be hurt regardless, but not as hurt, because it, uh, it opposed to a scenario in which he didn't, um he still needed things to do on himself, you know what I mean?
And I agree. And I think a big thing to understand too when it comes to this is that oftentimes the Topanga within her animus, she will use manipulation tactics that aren't necessarily above the board. Like a Topanga may use things like religion to manipulate you. Like a woman may come to you and say, I want to see what I feel like our relationship is just about sex. I feel like sex is just what keeps us together. I want to see what our relationship would be like without sex. That's a manipulation tactic, especially if a woman uses religion to do it. That's not truly who she is. She doesn't truly need to feel like she can follow a man spiritually, religiously in order to be submissive. But this is a manipulation tactic because the truth is she needs to gain enough intrinsic uh unconditional non-sexual validation from you to fill her cup up enough to be in a position where she has enough energy within herself to pursuing another man sexually. So that's really the truth of the matter. So when I talk about my song The Garden, really what that was about was me subconsciously understanding this. So I chose to be someone who could be considered the narcissistic boyfriend or the narcissistic ex, because I felt like, okay, she's not going to stick to what she says she believes. I've seen enough to know that this is the case. So I'm not going to give her that. She's going to have to earn this validation. I'm going to walk away, and then I'm going to fuck with her as a fuck buddy. And during that period of time, it's all good. But you know what happens with Topangas? What Topangas will do is they will present you with some type of idea that will make sense, right? It could be depression. It could be hormonal issues. It could be religious values and beliefs. It could be anything that they present through their animus, which is a father complex, as to why they do not want to be sexually available to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Yep.
they present this and then you succumb to it, then what will typically occur along the process is that she will finally get enough energy to be in a high cup space so that she can pursue being a whore. And the issue is this: for me personally, I don't have an issue with promiscuous women, right? I personally like promiscuous women. I'm gonna be honest with you, but there are certain sexual standards that have to be met because sex does have an effect on women in a particular way. So it's like if your needs are met with this particular woman, then if your needs are met well enough while you're in her presence to not worry about what she's doing when you're not around, then an open relationship doesn't really matter because you could separate yourself from what she's doing. But if the only thing she's doing to get you to not worry about what she's doing when you're not around is value that she's adding to your life non-sexually, then she's really hoarding her sexual energy and,
Mm.
and building that up for someone else. So, like, let's say you have a woman in your life who plays the role of Topanga. I call that the old lady, right? I need to make a video about old lady game. So, an old lady would be a woman who she may have a car if you don't have one, right? Or she may have a better job than you, right? Or she may be very dutiful, right? She may be a helpmate. She may be a woman who knows how to, if anything you say that you need, even if you're saying it just in passing, she'll go get that for you, right? She'll take care of whatever needs to be taken care of to make sure that you're straight. But really what she's doing is she's bribing you subconsciously with masculine attributes so that she can avoid being in a more feminine and opened up and uninhibited position with you.
Wait. So now those. So I hear what you just said. The only thing that I'm confused about is when you say masculine traits. Because if she goes to do what you want in passing, or even a direct directive, I don't I don't see how you attach that to masculine traits.
So I'll put it like this, right? Uh, when I look at the foundation of the sexual polarity quadrant, a woman's submissive ego is going to be more attached to her sexual uninhibitedness and shifts in her mindset and her ideology. If a woman isn't having shifts in her social programming as far as the way she looks at life and reality, and a woman isn't fully sexually submissive with you, then everything else that she shares with you, because remember, the tenets of being dominant are good D and guidance, right? So if
Mhm.
she isn't receptive to your guidance about your ideology in life or fully receptive to you sexually, then this could very well be a woman who's sharing uh, masculine qualities to bribe you out of holding standards to her about how things should work sexually and how things should work ideologically. So one thing a Topanga may do is get really good at sucking your dick, because if she gets really good at performing oral sex on you, then she can avoid being in a situation where through you entering her sexually, this is going to create too much stimulation. This is going to make her feel too uninhibited. This is going to
Mm.
make her feel too stretched
All right.
because
Speaking. Oh, you know what? I gotta put a pin on that because this is the next thing I want to talk about. Well, with you on your song, I don't know the name of it, but at 11:30, you begin to sing. You say, "Go deep as you want, but not that deep."
exactly. That's what song she said. You know, that song's really about a woman doing a masculine submissive exercise in self-control. So I believe that one of the biggest weaknesses of a masculine dominant man who's just now stepping into masculine dominance is a woman doing a masculine submissive exercise in self-control. And a masculine submissive exercise in self-control is when you make a logical, conscious decision to be submissive based off of understanding that there's a need that you have. So a man doing a masculine submissive exercise in self-control is when he meets a woman and decides that she's good enough non-sexual company. He may not fully want to be in a relationship with her, and he may not look at her as someone who he's too pressed about having sex with, but because her company is good enough and because the value that she adds to the conversation is good enough, he will be willing to interact with her non-sexually without an expectation of sex. And without this expectation being an overt thing, this bypasses psychological reactance due to some form of reverse psychology and due to plausible deniability. And what this does is it creates the avenue for the woman to feel as if she's coming to a conclusion that sex is something that she wants on her own, when really she may be feeling insecure about the fact that she believes that every man wants to fuck her, right? But this man isn't trying to fuck her actively. Therefore, her insecurities get triggered and she convinces herself that she is the one who wants sex more than he does, even if it's not true. And on the flip side of this is something that a man can experience with a woman as well, where let's say a woman, you're not used to women who are showing you intrinsic sexual desire. So a woman shows a desire to sleep with you sexually, but she's not being non-sexually receptive. She's not being receptive to your guidance. She's not being on your time. She wants to sleep with you on her time. So like, let's
Mhm.
say you're talking to a woman and she's open to sleeping with you, but she only wants to do it on her time. So let's say she will have a conversation with you, then ghost you for a week. And then after she ghosts you for a week, then she'll hit you up and then say she wants some dick. That would be a masculine submissive exercise in self-control. She's creating distance emotionally so that she can engage sexually while maintaining a position of feeling like she's in power and control.
Hmm. Yeah, man. I've in the vanilla world, I've seen a lot of that. You know what I'm saying?
But that, but you know, there's a short-term and a long-term version of that. And this is where the Topanga really comes in. The blue pill shorty really comes in. So on a short-term basis, it may be a woman who may ghost you until she's ready to sleep with you. And the long-term version of it, the old lady, the blue pill shorty, the Topanga, what she's going to do is she's going to do all the things she's doing for you non-sexually on a consistent basis, right? Because she desires the attention and the validation of dealing with you. But what will oftentimes occur is that she will place the primary priority of sex on oral sex, as in giving you head and giving her head, so that it's not something that's integrated, right? She doesn't want to be stretched that far. So she's going to get really good at giving you head because she feels a sense of power and control over that. But she also wants you to give her head because she feels like she's in a position of power and control because you're in a submissive position. So it's one of those things where it's about limiting how far she's being stretched sexually. And then she's going to take the energy that you pour into her to be non-sexually available to you. But this isn't because she doesn't have the capacity.
It's because she's putting that proverbial block on it. See, for me, when it comes to being one of my ladies, you're gonna have to be open to being stretched, in many ways, but in particular, we're talking about my chocolate. I'm not saying I got the biggest chocolate in the world, but I'm gonna touch that ass. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's not even no compromise on that.
Because I believe that as a man, that should really be your foundation of dealing with a woman if you're dominant, right? That should be the foundation. If anything, if you are in a position where you're in a long-term relationship with a woman, then you're really rewarding her with sex for the things she does non-sexually when you're in a masculine dominant position in a long-term relationship. But a woman can convince you or manipulate you into interacting in a way that appears that way, but really that's not what's going on. So I look at it like the 9-7 dichotomy. Do you remember us talking about the 9-7 dichotomy?
It's been a minute.
So let's say we're talking about what I call the pacifier principle. You remember the pacifier principle?
Mm-hmm.
So the pacifier principle is on a 7 level of sexual attraction, a woman is giving you head to pacify you. And understand this, when a woman's giving you head to pacify you, this is love and validation that's coming from a place of nurturing, but nurturing from a woman's natural sexual drive and primal sexual drive towards you. On a 9 level of sexual attraction, a woman is giving you head to pacify herself because she doesn't have access to you sexually right now, or because there's something that's standing in the way of it. So when we understand this, it's a different dichotomy that's taking place here. It's a different dichotomy. So I believe that as a man or as a masculine dominant, you need to have enough of your own shit together to where you're not overly relying on what a woman does for you non-sexually so that you can set your sexual standards. If not, then a woman who's in an insecure position in life is going to do things for you. So imagine this. Let me give this example. This is one great way of breaking down a pacifier principle. A woman can pick you up, take you on a date, right? Pay for the meal, right? And then feel like, damn, I gotta pay for the food, I gotta pick this nigga up, and I gotta fuck him or suck his dick afterwards. And then she feels like she's doing a lot. Another woman can feel like, I really want to sleep with this man, and in order to impress him enough to where he's willing to sleep with me, I have to pick him up, I have to pay for the date, and then he might let me suck the dick. That's the dichotomy in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Yeah, it's gonna be in my framework, period. Like, as relates to, I know how you feel about dates, but let's say I'm vanilla hunting, right? It's gonna be my place that I choose, the time in which, if you're available, but also when I choose the time, and I even go so far as
to not tell the woman where you're going ahead of time. I think that's one of the greatest tests.
Hold on one second.
My bad. Go ahead.
I even go so far as sometimes, not all the time, is all right. So I prefer a dress, not necessarily the color. If you my lady, it's gonna be the color, but I may go so far as to say what to wear, and that's in the vanilla hunt. That's initially. I'm not, I'm not gonna be under a woman's frame if I can help it. If I'm conscious of it, I'm not gonna be up under a woman's frame. That's just it ain't happening.
You know what? That's something I do as well. Like even in my relationship that I had with Topanga, it was a situation where there were certain ways that she showed a lot of submissiveness towards me. I'm not going to say that she didn't, because if she didn't, it wouldn't work at all, right? So there's certain things she would do for me, like certain things she would do to show her submissiveness. Like I have a foot fetish, so she would only get her toes painted in colors that I would allow her to, right? And
Mm.
anytime I'd see her, uh, especially if she was in a very submissive energy that day, she would get a. I like floral. I like women in floral print, right? So she would have a floral print phone, and then when she would come to see me, she would have a floral print outfit on. And then if she was really in her submissive energy, where she was really focused on my validation versus external validation, then she would have her natural hair. So it's certain micro things that take place. So if it was a situation where she's really in a high cup space, really focused on my validation, then she would have natural hair. When she would see me, she would oftentimes have floral print on, or an outfit that I told her that I liked, because she was focused on my validation. And then she would also have all white toes, maybe pink, maybe yellow, maybe mint. And then this would be a subconscious showing that, listen, I want your approval for the actions that I'm doing. And this is really about the validational loops. And as a man, you can really tell how submissive a woman is towards you by what changes she's willing to make to her appearance or how she carries herself. Because that same
Right.
woman, she would come to me and say, one day she came to me, she was like, do you feel like anything that I wear is inappropriate? I didn't have to come to her about it. She came to me, she's
Mm.
like, do you feel like anything that I wear is
Mm.
inappropriate or not an adequate representation of who you are as a man? And I'm like, no, right?
Mm.
And I think that this is a very powerful thing, because many times women will say, I'm just doing something for me. But we got to understand as men that anytime a woman says, quote unquote, I'm just doing something for me, if she's doing something just for her, like I remember in the Bible, it says that her desire will be unto the man, or unto her husband, he'll rule over her. I don't believe a woman will ever truly get beyond her desire for male validation. That's a
Mm.
personal belief that I have.
Mm.
So
And
if it's,
let me interject if you don't mind.
go ahead.
So man, I can relate to that, fully, in terms of I'm just gonna speak on the hair. So early on, if the conversation may come up, it may not. But all of my ladies know that you are not to cut your hair. I don't. I'm not. It's not to say I haven't dated women with short hair, but that's not my thing, right? Um, and if you have natural hair, that is what I prefer. And I've noticed, and I don't have to harp on this, you know what I'm saying? And I've noticed just what you said, that um, my ladies will seek my approval, by the way of their hair, and guess what? It turns me on, in a way that they will probably never know, because they are seeking, my validation, my approval, and that's important to me. Same thing with it when it comes to my colors. When I see my ladies uh, wearing my colors, their nails, their clothes, their outfit, even down to personal things within their home, it I see that, and not only do I appreciate that, they don't even know, but I reward them for that. You see what I'm saying?
I'm the same way, man. And like how I am is, for me, to me with my foot fetish, I'm more into, like, that means a lot to me. So if I'm dealing with a woman, typically she's gonna keep the toes all white, because that's what I like. And to me, uh, this one thing about it, when you're very in tune with the women that you deal with, is that you'll recognize the little details. So I see when you get your hair the way I like it. I'll see when you're wearing the outfit that I told you that I like. I'll see when you have your toes the color that I like. I'll see when you're doing certain things that show that you desire my approval for the actions that you take. And when I see this, I'm not going to overlook it. I'm going to praise this and I'm going to reward this. But it's a double-sided thing, because when I see something going contrary to that, I'm also going to notice it.
Right, right. And that's I don't want to go too much. We talk. We gonna talk. We have talked about my protocols in Pacific. The ones that has to be done every day. I can tell if something's wrong. I can tell if something's off. I don't even have to speak to you. That's the beauty of it. I don't even have to speak to you to see what's going on. But that's a whole nother thing. You know what I'm saying? But let me move on to um that same song. And I just like the dialogue, bro. When you say multiple times, deep, 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 then you say back that shit up. Don't run from it. Get that dick. That was I just thought it was hilarious, bro.
You know what? That was from a different song. There's a song that I did a feature on by Lace the Hand. She just dropped the project like yesterday. She's one of the best artists in my area. And yeah, I love Lace's music. I had 2 features on her project back in like 2021, 2023 called Physical Education, right?
Mm,
And in this project is a bunch of baby makers. I had 2 features. One feature is called Slow. Another feature was called Better. And the first song I did was a feature called Slow. She initially wanted that feature to be about a man dealing with a woman and that woman taking control for the night to please her man. And I was like, all right, cool, I'll do it. I had 2 experiences that because I had 2 subs that night, 2 subs at the time. And I had my main girl, which was my Topanga, right? And then I had my 2 submissives that I was dealing with. You know what's crazy? A lot of people don't believe in zodiac signs, but 80% of my submissives have been Aquariuses, right? Aquarians. And
interesting.
I had 2 Aquarian subs at the time, and I wrote both of my features about those subs that I had. So one I wrote Slow about, and then the other one I wrote Better about. And this was about a very heavy degradation kink night, right? She was a brat. Both of them were a little bit brats. I didn't recognize it at the time, but one of them was a brat real heavy, and she was acting up. So I had her come through. When I had her come through, I was throat fucking her. And I'm not talking about face fuck. I'm saying throat fucking, right? And I had her ride me, and it was if you listen to the song, you know what I'm talking about. But it was a situation in that particular song where she came through one night and it was time for punishment. It was time for a dom session. And, she came in, I was smoking, and I didn't say nothing to her. And then I walked her over to the room, walked her to the corner. I said, get on your knees, had her suck it. I said, prove to me why you deserve to get some dick tonight. Right? So
Mm,
I said, stop playing with it. Put it in your throat. Don't, not on your throat, in your throat. So after she did that for a little while, and I felt like she did enough to deserve some dick, I was like, all right, cool. I said, I stopped. I stopped her, and I told her to get on the bed, face down, ass up. I hit it till she came 2 or 3 times, and then I stopped out of nowhere, and I just rolled up again. I smoked again. Then after I stopped that, I did that, and then I got up, sat with my back against the wall in the bed, and I said, "You want to please me?" And she said, "Yes, sir." I like those honorifics, right? And
mm,
I said, "You want to please me?" I said, "Make yourself come on that dick."
there you go. There you go.
Right. So she did
Um,
it she did it the first time. She wrote me till she came. And then she tried to stop after she came. I said, keep going. She did it again. I said, who the fuck told you could stop?
mm,
I really got into my dime bag that night. And then she kept going. Then she came again that third time. Her body was shaking. She was convulsing. And then I said, who the fuck? Don't make me get up. Because you're not gonna like it if I get up. You're not listen, if I get up, it's gonna be a problem. So when she was in between that third and fourth orgasm, she started having a mental breakdown. She started crying. She started just because 1 out of every 3 women I ever put dick in was crying during sex. So she started crying and convulsing and stuff like that. And then after she had that 4th orgasm, I was kind of in my bag that night. I said, "Get off of me," right? And then we made a little video, right? So,
understood, my brother.
but
Yes.
I made a video. I made a song referencing that particular night. So at the end of She Said, so I wrote She Said back in like 2020, right? That was about a different woman, right?
Okay.
That was about a different woman. But I took the beginning of my verse from Better and put that as the outro for She Said, which was when I was more in my dime bag. And this is something that took place like 2, 3 years later. But
Understood.
yeah, so that was a different story, but I just felt like it fit good. So I took what I wrote for Better by Lace the Hands and I put it at the end of She Said.
Understood. So now it brings me to my favorite. I think is well, me personally is my favorite one, and it starts at 1340. I believe this song is, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this song is called "I Wonder How It Feels." You know, a line you say, you open up, piquing my interest. Got to give you credit. I didn't think you existed. Melanated misfit.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna tell you what was going on in that song, right? It
Well,
was a
hold on one second. I just want to tell you why I like it. I like the beat. I like your flow on that. I like your voice inflection. It to me it's a polished song.
You know what? I didn't want to do too many polished songs in this project, but this was a song I made some years back, right? And what I decided was I wanted to do this particular way. I sampled "Like a Star" by Corinne Bailey Rae, right? And what this song really represents is, see, this project, it really chronicles my journey, my sexual journey, my spiritual journey, in a 10-year relationship that I had, right? And there's a point in time where I recognized that the woman I was with was not really true or real about who she said she was when it came to her values and her beliefs. But this woman was seen to be a more real and authentic version of what the woman I was with expressed herself to be. So she was a Topanga, but a truer Topanga than the woman I was with, right?
Mm.
And with this woman, what the song is really about is me battling with meeting a woman who represented a truer form of what I considered a Topanga, and me deciding not to try to follow through with that because I knew the journey and the path that I was on. So I didn't actually try to be with that woman, to be honest with you. But I enjoyed the time that I spent with her, and I really enjoyed her company. She was a woman who would show up, anytime we would set a date, she would never flake, not a date, but we would hang out. We'll go out. Sometimes she would pay, sometimes I would pay. It was all good. And we would get on the phone. We'll talk for hours. But I also recognized that this woman wasn't showing the level of sexual receptiveness and submissiveness, even if we had conversations about sex. So for me, it was just playing with the idea of, man, this woman is very attractive to me. I was extremely attracted to her, right? But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to subject myself to the same type of woman that I already have and disrespect
Mhm.
the relationship dynamic that I had with the woman that I was already with. And this relates to later on in the project, because the same woman that I was with, over time, a couple years later, she would end up being in positions where she would be pursuing, trying to get to know or build relationships with men who are pretty much great value versions of me. She would pursue relationships with men who had a lot of similar attributes to me. Like some men had the same birthday, into the same stuff that I'm in. When they would have conversations, they'd bring up the same type of conversation, and it would be men who are very similar to me. So what this really represented was me being in a situation of meeting a woman who represented that Topanga to me, right? But I was like, you know what? I can't go forward with it, but I'll play with the idea of it in my mind and make a song about it. So I didn't actually pursue a relationship with that woman, but I recognized that she represented a real version. Like I had a conversation with that woman recently. She told me she's still been celibate ever since I wrote that song years ago. But I'm like,
Wow.
yeah, but I'm like, no, I got to the point in my life where I'm like, I don't really care what a woman's not doing with somebody else if she isn't doing what I want her to do with me. And
Mm.
that's where I had to decide I'd rather be the masculine frame of a relationship rather than trying to find a woman who's just masculine enough to stick to the boundaries that she sets. I remember I was talking to the woman that I was with for that 10 years, and there were two women that she felt insecure about, really, over the course of our 10-year relationship, because it wasn't a strictly monogamous relationship. So we got to keep that true. But it was a monopoly relationship. So she would meet men and have non-sexual relationships with them, or we would have breaks and then she would start something, but not go all the way and fuck them, but she would, do other stuff. And I would meet women and have sexual relationships, but I wouldn't pursue dating these women, or I would either spend time with them non-sexually or sexually. I'd pick one or the other. And in these scenarios, there were two women she felt insecure about. the woman I wrote COVID Floor about and the woman I wrote Feel Like about. And one day she came to me, it's like towards the end of last year. And she was like, she told me about these two women, the woman from Feel Like and the woman from COVID Floor. And I was like, well, the woman from COVID Floor, she's too shifty, right? She bad as hell. She's definitely more attractive than her. Well, both of them were more attractive than her. But the woman from Feel Like, she was a more real version of what she expressed herself to be. And the woman from COVID Floor was someone who I related more to on a mental level, right, on an intellectual level, and I was more attracted to. And she was a little bit more. I don't necessarily say she was more freaky because the other girl did more shit, but she was willing to take more sexual initiative. So it was a situation where I was like, listen, one girl that you felt insecure about, she's too shifty. So when you start moving as shifty as she is, you're not going to have the same position in my life. Your consistency is why you're above her. But this other woman, she wasn't as sexually receptive as you are. So even if I was more attracted to her and we had better conversations, I wasn't going to prioritize her over you or disrespect our relationship dynamic by willing to try to take things further with her, even though we weren't in a sexual relationship. So the Feel Like track was about a woman who represented the Topanga on a higher level than the woman I was already with.
Understood. All right, so this one stood out to me is at the 27-minute mark. And the reason why this one stood out to me is because you put so many like this is, I mean, all of it is you, but this one is what I a big aspect of what I know you from, and that is the concepts and the videos, the and these are not in a particular order of the song, but you referenced the hand in the cookie jar, Jensen Gigolos, Can't Serve Two Masters, playing stepdad Piccolo. I might have said that wrong, but yeah, this song here, Jensen Gigolos, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of the in this song in terms of you basically. I think, and I don't know. It seems like it was a conscious decision to put your stamp in terms of your concepts into one song.
Yeah, man. That Jensen Gigolo song, it was very. I wrote that when I was in Indianapolis for the summer because I was originally born in Indianapolis, right? And this took place after I was dealing with one of my subs. It was the same sub that I wrote the first verse on Paranoid and the overall concept of Paranoid about. And it was really a prophetic song because I wrote that song before I was in that position with that woman, right? Because when I first met her, she was single, but then she would run off and get the boyfriend itch. That's something women deal with sometimes, the boyfriend itch, where they feel like they're dealing with the dominant man, but he's not immediately succumbing to her desire to be in a relationship. So they'll run off and meet a guy, but he doesn't sexually satisfy her. So she'll come back around. And when she's not sexually satisfied, she'll come back around and then you'll be her side guy. So when I wrote that song, it was really me talking about what I consider the gentleman gigolo complex, right? It's the female version of the Madonna core complex that people oftentimes don't talk about. We'll listen to Jungian psychology, we'll listen to Freudian psychology, and oftentimes people act as if only men have Madonna whore complexes. No, women have their own version of Madonna whore complex, where either you're the nice guy and they're going to hold you to a standard of being someone who creates safety unconditionally, or you're going to be the bad boy who's going to offer emotional detachment and sexual attraction for the woman, but without having any level of emotional attachment or investment in them. So when I was writing that song, I was really thinking about this concept, but I found myself in the same position. So that song is really a cautionary tale. Jensen Gigolos is my second single. This is a song that's out on all platforms. I remember I was with the woman that I was the woman I spent the 10-year relationship with, and she ended up getting into a situation where she got into limerence and was caught up on another man. And I said, listen, don't make his lyrics true about me, right? But make my lyrics true about him. I found myself in a position where she started making some of my lyrics in that song true about me. That shit hurt my feelings a little bit. I ain't gonna lie to you, right?
I remember you telling me.
Yeah. So I was like, but it's par for the core. It's par for the course, right? It's the game. That's just how the game works. So it's like Gents and Gigolos. And it's a lot of lines in that song that really resonate. I originally wrote that song to the Rey Mysterio beat by Alchemist, right? By the Alchemist, one of my favorite producers. And when I wrote that song to that, I originally wrote the song that I made that beat for, and there's no samples in Gents and Gigolos. It was originally called Bigger Fish Theory, right? Bigger Fish. So the original song went, I'm the prey, you're the predator, like a youcher. Baby girl, I know you're nasty, I never doubt you. I know you can take it all. I never out you. I know you liking a challenge. I guess you found one, Bigger Fish, right?
Mm.
And I got a video on my YouTube called Bigger Fish Theory, which is where I'm really talking about how healthy attachments and healthy communication and healthy relationships do not overpower trauma bonds unless an individual has become healthy themselves. So a lot of my journey into BDSM really came through acting out of being a sexual healer through the platform of giving a woman the opportunity to reinterpret traumatic experiences that she's had through being able to deal with me from a place of desire. So like, let's say it would be throat fucking, or let's say it would be casual sex. Let's say it would be me having multiple women that I'm sleeping with. Let's say it would be degradation, calling women bitches and degrading them. And I would deal with the women or deal with multiple women, and these women would be receptive to these things that I would do. But at the same time, they would be communicating with me the grievances that they have with their ex-partners. And I would like break down to them like, listen, stimuli is neutral, right? You did not desire nor respect this man enough to be receptive to what he was saying and what he was doing. But ultimately,
Yes.
I want the same things that he wanted. And the only reason you're truly receptive to these things with me is because I'm not emotionally attached to you, right? I'm a sex coach, and I'm really like that when it comes to sex. So I can't say I'm not better than the guy sexually, because that's probably not true. But I'm not so different from this guy in the way that I think, in the way that my ego works, right? So I would break down to the women like, listen, stimuli is neutral. So let's say a woman was in a physically abusive relationship, but when I would dominate a woman, let's say I would be throat fucking a woman, right? And I would tell her, if I'm throat fucking you and you need to catch a breath, then just take the dick to the tip of your mouth and then keep licking on the head, keep slurping on it, and breathe through your nose, right? Don't fuck up my nut because you want to breathe. I don't care about that. And if a woman didn't listen, I would smack her. I'd smack the shit out of her, right? That's just what type of guy I am. I smack the shit out of a bitch. If I tell you that if you deep throating me and you want to catch a breath, to just put the dick in the tip of your mouth and lick and slurp on the head, and you don't listen to me, I'm gonna smack you. That's just the truth of the matter, right? So, but a woman may have been smacked by a man in the past and felt like that was abusive. To me, they would get turned on. I got text message proof from women who said they just loved how I would make them do that. Or like, let's say a woman would be in a relationship where she felt like a man was verbally abusive because he would call her a bitch when he got mad. And I'm like, I said bitch in the first conversation, and I would be fucking a woman and tell her, like, and I would do this even with the woman who was my Topanga, right? And I would be like, when she's giving me head or I'm fucking, I'm like, when she coming, I say you my nasty bitch. Say you my nasty bitch. You know what I mean? And they'll say it back to me. And this is certain things that are considered abusive or verbally abusive or physically abusive or emotionally abusive. I would put women in positions where they would accept this, they would embrace this, and they would love it. Right?
Right. So here's the thing. I'm similar in that regard, especially when it comes to humiliation, especially when it comes to on the border of consensual non-consent. I'm not full on, for my own
I'm
personal
I'm full on
personal
consensual
reasons.
non-consent. I'm full on
Understood.
consensual
Understood. Now the only difference, between me and you and what you said is I could also have an emotional attachment to my ladies, but still degrade them. That's I guess maybe that's the only difference between me and you in that regard.
I could still do that, but I think there's a difference between emotional attachment and non-attached love, right?
Mm.
I don't think I'm mature enough, right? This is me being honest with myself. I don't think I'm mature enough to have non-attached love. I think I can only do that once I've dealt with a woman and I know she can fuck with other men and still be submissive with me, right?
Mm.
If a woman meets my sexual standards, she meets my standards of submissiveness, she can fuck with other men, and then I know she's still going to come back to me, then I can love her from a non-attached place. But until I've seen both of those things taking place, then it's either attachment or detachment. So I think what you're expressing is more of a non-attached love. Not that you don't love the woman, not that you're not invested in the woman, simply that it's non-attached. Because being attached to a woman with your ego creates an environment where this really causes a woman to operate with you from a place of maternal love. And maternal love kills sexual attraction.
Indeed, I can see it in that regard. Is it's just the um, how can I say this? I really dig even go so far as love, but you're right. It's not a maternal. I don't like that. That maternal love. That you're absolutely right. That no, it's um basically the reward system. Um, but yeah, let me go on to the next one. It's at the 29 minute mark. It's the 80-20 rule.
Oh yeah,
Dope
it's
beat,
called paranoid.
paranoid. Okay. Um, it's dope beat, dope flow. This is something. The 80-20 rule is a known concept in the manosphere, right? But go ahead and break it down how you broke it down in the song.
So the first verse and the overall song concept was really inspired by one of my favorite submissives. It was the one who I wrote the song Slow about. And this was a song in which I began to empathize with the main man in relationship scenarios in which a woman would choose me to be her sexual dominant, right? This is my side nigga days. I'm not the biggest fan of being a side nigga anymore because I believe in karma, right?
Mm,
And I found myself in a position where I dealt with the karma from that. So my third verse, so the guy on the song with me was the side nigga for the woman that I loved,
mm,
right?
right. And
But
and,
he,
and did he ever find that out or no?
yeah, we talked about it before I dropped the song.
That's crazy.
Cause I told the girl, I said, listen, if you fuck me over on this, me and him gonna team up and you gonna be out in the cold. That I told the bitch that. She ain't listen.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, so I was just in a position where in the third verse, oh listen, I found out because before I went to the studio to record that song with him, I went to his studio and recorded it. He let me record it for free. He's a cool ass dude, right? Maestro the lyricist. Before I went to record it with him, I found out the night before the bitch was sucking dick
Mm.
with somebody I was working with.
How you find out, man?
Well, she would try to use religion as a way of getting away from the situation with me through her animus projection or her animus possession, right?
Mm.
And when she would try to use that as a way of separating herself from the situation, she was like, well, I'm not going to start a new relationship, sexual relationship with somebody else. So she tried to play on the line and say that because she didn't have sexual intercourse with the guy that it didn't count and it didn't matter, right? And that was really something I started because when me and her were first in a relationship, I decided to go celibate for religious reasons, and then we would use oral sex as a loophole. So me and her, we separated for a little while, so we weren't in a committed relationship. So I can't be but so mad at her about it. But to me, it was the social connection of the situation. So she came to me one day because it was all the shit was going on. Because me and him, we was on tour together. And she came to me one day And she was like, you might be right. I may not be integrated like that. I may not have certain mindsets together. I do feel like having sex separates me from my relationship with God, and my cup is low. So she wanted to separate herself. She wanted to take a break. And I was like, all right, cool, we'll take a break. I didn't say anything this time. I left it alone, right? Because I wanted to see what she would do. I see her on the nigga social media page, all this other shit. We stopped talking to each other for about 6 weeks. After we stopped talking to each other for about 6 weeks, she hit me up periodically. I would keep it real short with her. And then she would hit me up. And when she would hit me up, she would be on some shit where, when my birthday came around, which was November 14th, I was able to piece together what was going on between them through what was going on social media, because the guy was liking my posts on social media talking about the situation. So she came to me around my birthday, was telling me she got me a bunch of stuff. She bought me some ring. She bought me a ring. She bought me some earrings. She bought me some other stuff. She bought me a bunch of stuff for my birthday, spent a bag on me for my birthday. So I'm like, all right, cool. So when my birthday came around, she was trying to tell me the stuff she got me for my birthday. I told her to pull up, come eat some dick up, right? Because if you contacted me too much, I'm like, bitch, you must want to fuck or something. Because if not, then you just an attention whore in my eyes. So I told her to come through. She came through. She picked me up because truck was down. Because I was in the process of being about to transition back to Florence, South Carolina from Orangeburg. I went to Orangeburg for school, and I finished my coursework, but I didn't get my degree yet because I owed money directly to the school. And I was waiting until I moved back to Florence before I buy a car. So she came through to get me. When she came through to get me, and keep in mind, I broke this whole situation down to her ahead of time. When we were on our way back to Florence, South Carolina, I was like, listen, I talked to the guy like 2-3 days ago. Me and him agreed that we're going to have a studio session and we're going to get this song done. She thought the situation was over. We were all on tour together. And I told her, it's not over. He just waits until you do shit that strokes his ego before he hits me back. But the bitch didn't listen, right? Mm-hmm. So when we were on our way back to Florence, I'm like, listen, I'm about to be in this man's face tomorrow. I'm about to go record with him tomorrow. Did you do anything that I need to know about? She's like, yeah, well, I said, I gave him some head. He gave me some head. He ate some ass, shit like that. And I was like, you a dumbass bitch. I was mad. I ain't gonna lie. I was mad. I was mad as hell. So yeah, I was mad because I'm like, listen, I told you before this, like back in February. Keep in mind, this is something that took place in November. So I told her back in February, I'm like, listen, before I even knew about the guy, I said, don't let it be somebody you're too socially connected to where if I'm back in the picture, you can't leave him alone. I said, don't be somebody you're too socially connected to on social media. Don't let it be somebody who has an occupation to where they can use dealing with you as social ammunition against me, right? I let all these things be known ahead of time. She didn't listen. So it was really a process that took course over the course of that year that really hurt me a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So I was patient with her for a long time before it got to this point. But she did tell me at one point that she was really just biding her time so that she could, because when we were on tour together, she was really just biding her time so that she could go deal with the guy. And I was telling her, like, listen, this dude don't really fuck with you like that. He in the same situation as we are. He has an old lady who done gained a good bit of weight, and he has his side bitches, and she probably is the same type of woman as you are, to where she uses religion to try to circumvent sexuality with him. I end up having conversations with him. He says she do the same thing. He told me, I was having a conversation with him recently. And he was like, yeah, she's like, I want to see what it's like. I feel like sex is just what keeps us together. And I'm like, yo, the way she already told you about the situation with my girl, she gonna get her lick back. As soon as you give her enough validation of where her cup gets full, she gonna fuck you over again. I told my girl, I said, listen, he called her best friend because she fucked him over. If not, he would still be claiming her as his woman and just be dealing with other women. So we were in a situation where I broke things down to her, but it didn't register to her. Mm-hmm. So when they spent some time together, when me and her separated from each other, she was, on tour with him. They was, going to his shows and stuff like that, supporting him on video, singing the same songs that I said not to make his lyrics true about me on video, right? Mm. And during this period of time, I saw all this stuff and I kept it to myself. I didn't say anything to her. So when my birthday came around, she was hitting me up. And the next day I went to go record with him, and I was fumed. I was mad as hell, right?
Mm.
I was mad as hell.
Man, that right there, man. As a artist, that I respect the creative so much, and for you to be authentic in that way, and then to drop a track on that to paint that, man, I think that's dope. I think that's super dope. And just one comment on your experience, um, man, the love that you shown her to basically try to guide her, like, this is what's going to happen. I don't need you to do this, and she, like you said, it didn't register. Man, that's some deep stuff, man. Because you know ultimately she didn't listen. But man, it'd be so dope to have find a woman who listened the first time, and not have to go through that reality testing as she did. Um, anyway, you know what I mean?
But I gotta be honest with you though, right? It wasn't that she was dishonest with me. She told me certain things that she wanted to do. It was different points along the process where we had different conversations about things. She actually didn't do any things that broke rules that I told her at different points in time, right? Because if you listen to the third track of my project, it's called Puer Aeternis, right? And this was about a period in my life where I was going through my own crisis. I was in a stage in my life where I became emotionally overstimulated. I became exposed to what it felt to be feminine submissive towards my goals and desires, right? And during that period of time, I had a situation with my father where I was in college at the time, right? I had a 3.5 at South Carolina State University. I had already gotten my associate's degree. This was like in going into 2017 or 2018. And during this period of time in my life, I was studying certain things psychologically and spiritually, theologically, to where I asked myself the question, if I could make a teacher salary, because I was going to school to become a school teacher. And I was like, if I can make a teacher salary making music, what would I do? And I said, I would rather make music. So at this point in my life, I realized I wanted to be a musician and artist for a living, right?
Mhm.
And during this period of time, I lost all of my motivation to continue doing the schoolwork I was doing because it wasn't associated with what my passion was, right?
Mhm.
And during this period of time, me and my father went through a lot, right? Me and my father went through a lot. Like I said, my father's the man I respect the most in my life. So when we were going through this process, me and my father, we got into it. Like he threatened to shoot me one time, and
Damn.
this when I moved out because I had dyed my beard. You know what I mean? And I didn't understand that it was homecoming weekend, and he had some people set up for me to meet and to talk to, in hopes of me getting a job or talking to people where I could have a career when I graduate from school. And I didn't notice what he had planned. He didn't tell me. He just expected me to just follow suit. And it was a situation where what I wanted to do was to drop out. The only reason I didn't drop out was because I wanted to respect the investment. The only reason I didn't drop out was because my father took out Parent Plus loans for me to go
Mm.
to school. That's the only reason I didn't drop out. I didn't care about me. I was like, shit, if I gotta be homeless for a little while and do my thing and do whatever I gotta do to make it work, this is just gonna make my story better. And when it make my story better, this is just gonna be even better towards my music career. So I was in a position where I wanted to drop out of school and pursue music, but I wasn't ready yet. I didn't have, like, I had this concept in my mind. I want to make quality content on a consistent basis,
Mm.
right? But I didn't feel like I was there yet. He didn't feel like I was there yet. So what he would do is he would start shooting down my dreams, shooting down my goals. All this did was make me want to go harder to spite him, right? And that's the same position she was in. I'm like, this nigga don't like you like that, for one. And then for two, is a situation where I've been trying to teach you what it would take for you to actually run a game and to actually be in a position to make things work correctly for a long time, and you weren't receptive to it. So if you actually try to get out there and go into these streets and to operate things, one, you either gonna lose me or you're gonna lose both me and him. Neither one of us gonna want to be with you because you don't know how to actually run shit, right?
Right.
So for a long time throughout the course of last year, I tried to be patient with her because I was trying to empathize from a space of understanding that I was in the same position in my own life. So it's not like I could really judge her, because like towards the end of 2022, she was going through a pre-30 crisis. Right? This
Mhm.
pre-30 crisis where she had a fear of responsibility. She had a fear of commitment. She had a fear of these different things. And because of this fear, it led to her being in a space where she just wanted to really explore her options. She wanted to see what was out there. She spent a long time being faithful to me, even while we weren't in a committed relationship. So it wasn't that this was just such a promiscuous woman or such a duplicitous woman, but her mindset was duplicitous. And she was very heavy in psychological reactance. So
Mhm.
me communicating to her directly would just only feel like pressure, although I would be telling her something that would be mutually beneficial and beneficial for her. But because I'd been in that situation before, I tried to be understanding. But after a while, I found myself in a position where it felt like she was trying to make me prove my love to her. And when I
Mhm.
felt like that, after a while, I lost my patience and I started calling her all type of bitches. I did. And not from a place of dominant empathy, not from a place of how I typically deal with women where I say bitch in the first conversation and they get horny when I do it. No, from a place of, no, bitch, I'm mad.
Right.
You a dumbass bitch. But it helped me forgive my father and empathize with him about the things he was saying to me that hurt me at the position I was in life, because I'm like, this is my beer, this is my body, this is what I want to do, this is my life. But I'm like, no, my father, it probably wasn't even so much about his loan that he took out. It was more so a matter of he cared about me, but that loan that he took out was the only reason I didn't jump out there. So that's kind of how it works. So when I wrote the song Prayer Eternus, it's a dual song. One part of the song is the stage in life I was in, because sometimes when you're in that position, you will think that you're running away from responsibility so that you can chase your passion or chase your dreams. But really, if you aren't willing to jump all the way over there, then you're going to find yourself in a position where, while you believe that you are separating yourself from your responsibilities and from your obligations so that you can take a more feminine submissive stance towards whatever you desire, really what's typically going to end up happening is that you're going to put yourself in a position where you're simply going to pursue frivolous desires and ego gratification during that time. So I talked a lot about sex addiction in that song, because that's what it led to for me. I
Mm.
didn't separate myself from putting all my effort into school so that I could uh, pursue my music, because I felt guilty about that. So what I ended up doing was just smoking hella weed, drinking hella liquor, fucking hella bitches. so
Understood.
so when I recognized that and I understood that, I tried to be understanding and I tried to communicate with her. I'm like, well, how could my father have talked to me when I was in that stage in my life to where I could have understand where he was coming from? And I tried it for a period of time, trying to create emotional safety. I would listen to a lot of Jeffrey Setawan videos, and from Nice Guys or from Good Guys, the Great Men, right? It's dope YouTube channels talking about the integrated masculine, which is the overflowing cup space, which is typically something that's held on for men who are already married, who already have a certain level of social obligation and emotional, social, financial, and financial obligation towards the woman, to where it wouldn't benefit them to leave the woman alone. So while I was attempting to do this, I recognized that she was taking advantage of this. And when I recognized she was taking advantage of this, because I told her ahead of time, I said, listen, I'm not giving you advice to build a relationship with another man.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that because you my bitch, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when I recognized she was, every time, like, so it would work like this, right? When I would try to uh provide that safety to where what you want to do, you can do, and I would just let her know what would hurt me the most. I remember one time we were having a conversation. I said, well, what do you want to do? Well, him fucking you, I ain't really with that, right? You sucking dick. Well, he got lyrics about DNA on the eyelids, so don't make his lyrics true about me. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be in a situation where you're fluid bonded with somebody else.
Hmm.
So if you want to allow him to take a submissive position and just giving you head or eating your ass or whatever it is, I ain't tripping on that. We did have a little point of contention about sucking dick at all, because I'm like, well, if you do it with a condom, I ain't gonna trip on that. But everything that I said about what was acceptable, she really held up to those. She held up to those standards. She ain't let the dude nothing in her mouth. You know what I mean? But she couldn't get him to do it, because I don't think that's a dude who really nut from head anyways. So it's always that playing on the fence, that toe in the line thing, right? So it was a situation where, although she kept up to those standards, it was the fact that this was standards set months prior, before we were socially connected, right? So when it occurred, it was an issue. And that reminded me of the situation where one day me and my father were having a conversation, and I was saying how I wanted to get my ears pierced, or I was saying how I wanted to get tattoos, or I was saying different things I wanted to do. And when I was like 16, and he was like, you know, you got to wait until you're older first. But I didn't do these things until I was in my 20s. At this time, he felt like I'm too old to be doing this shit, right? To be experimenting now. So he got mad at me for getting my ears pierced. He got mad at me for dyeing my beard, for doing these different things. But these were things he had agreed to years prior, but we were in a different position now. And he got mad. I didn't understand why he was mad. I'm like, this is something you said was cool, right? You said, when I'm grown now. So this is what the fuck I want to do. And that's kind of the same position she was in.
Understood. So I do have to close. I have to close pretty soon. I gotta head to the barbershop. But I want to mention these other tracks. So at the 39-minute mark, whomever that is singing, she's extremely clear. She got a nice voice. She says, he calls me baby girl, but fuss me like I'm grown. Daddy, please don't hurt me. You know, that's on there. That could be an anthem for a lot of dynamics. You know what I'm saying?
You know what's interesting about that? Those were lyrics that the woman who I was with wrote about me, but she didn't want to do that on a song because she was a gospel artist. So because she wasn't willing to do that because she was a gospel artist, I found somebody else to sing those lyrics. That was Lace the Hands, the same one who I did Slow and Better with.
Okay.
So I got permission from her for someone else to do the lyrics, to sing the lyrics, and those were lyrics she wrote about me. So the initial track for those lyrics were for the next track, which is Adi Dadi, right? Which is one of the tracks that played before we started the podcast. And Adi Dadi is pretty much a response to those lyrics.
You talking about when it the one you got the video for, and you sitting down?
Yep, it's pretty much a response to the lyrics in that song.
Understood. So it runs together. So yeah, I like it. You know, I quoted some of the lyrics. I can still check a bitch, so you better watch your tone.
You know what I think is very interesting about Adi Dadi is that basically what I did was, and I know we only got but so much time left, but I really want to get through some of this stuff real quick for you got to go to the barbershop. But I took the concepts of being a daddy dom, mixed that with the degradation kink, and then mixed that with jive turkey exploitation verbiage, you know, pimp talk, in order to make it sound like pimp talk. But really, I was just talking about being a daddy dom throughout the entire song. But I also had lyrics in there like, can't be rocking with a mole, gotta know it's your role. I was sending a message to her like, listen, if you gonna move funny with me in this situation, that's actually a social situation, because she was mostly a homebody, which is why she got a lot of grace from me, because she would stick to herself. So I was like, listen, if you can't be rocking with a mole, gotta know it's your role. So in my mind, it's like this. These were lyrics that were, I was having a conversation with dating coach, BDSM coach, sex coach, Coach Justin Adams, right? And when I was having a conversation with Justin Adams, when I was really going through it, because the bitch broke my heart, I ain't gonna lie to you, right? Like most niggas ain't gonna be honest about it. I was hurt. She didn't even fuck the guy yet. I was heartbroken before that. And I mean, to my knowledge, she still ain't fucked the guy, right? But it was enough that was done to where I was hurt. And during this situation, I called Justin Adams. We had a conversation, Coach Justin, And he was like, just leave. And I'm like, man, I'm too deep in to just leave. I'm already in a social situation. I'm on tour with the motherfuckers. This shit crazy. Right. But he
Mm,
was like, well, write down your program, few paragraphs, write down what you expect in a woman and how you want your relationship and dating life to look like. And when we had this conversation, I was having a hard time writing it down. But then one day I was listening to the beat growing and I was just writing down the lyrics and pretty much Adi Dottie details what my program is. So any woman I would deal
mm,
with, I would just send her Adi Dottie. If she can get with what's in that song, then she can deal with me. So
mm. Now, like when you say, does she surrender and follow even if she doesn't know? That's to me that's a deep line. You know what I'm saying? And a clear one. You know,
it's
because a lot of women, they'll say, well, before I submit, I gotta know this, that, and the third. I gotta know this, da 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 da.
I'm like, bitch,
Um,
no, you don't.
exactly, exactly. You know, um, you know enough about me, and then yes, it's a process of trust. You know what I'm saying? I will give it that. But at the same time, if I'm telling you meet me here at this time, I don't need to tell you what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take care of it. And if you buck on that, you ain't for me.
Exactly. Exactly. So that song, I was because I also understand too, part of the black exploitation motif throughout some parts of this project is that, man, I was going through it, man. I was heartbroken and I was homeless at the time too. So when I was
Mm,
really doing a lot of recording for this project, I was heartbroken, homeless. My life felt like good times at the time because like the college, I had a conversation with them. They said they would allow me to walk at graduation, and then they reneged on it like 3 days before graduation when I was out of town with baby girl going to Charlotte so that we could go on a trip so that we go see Mac Ayres perform. And I love Mac Ayres, by the way. So when you look at the Young Niggas Inspiration playlist, there's a bunch of Mac Ayres songs in there. That's the artist she put me on. And like my life felt like good times throughout 2023. That's how it felt. It was like it's a bunch of highs and lows. It was the worst year of my life and the best year of my life at the same time. And I
mm,
was just thinking about these different things. I was also thinking about playing the animus, right? Because people talk about playing the anima. I remember a video by Marie Louise von France talking about playing the anima, which is when a woman's in a position where she's projecting her animus onto a man, and then through projecting her animus, she may be willing to do things from a place of desiring validation that extend beyond what her natural desire or her natural inclination is to do, which is playing the anima, right? Which is trying to play either the Madonna or to play the whore for a man in order to try to gain his approval. But a lot of this project, when it gets to some of the aspects of me presenting a certain persona, is really about me playing the animus, right? And playing the animus is like being this super nigga, right? I'm like, shit, I'm an undefeated amateur boxer. I'm a boxing coach. I'm a sex coach. I'm a dom. You know what I mean? I'm a super nigga. Like what people, oftentimes I would reject that or I wouldn't see that within myself. But then I had to take a step back in the place of insecurity and imposter syndrome that I was in and look at my life circumstances and be like, well, damn, I actually am the guy that people pretend to be.
mm,
I actually am that guy.
mm,
Like I really do be fucking these bitches asleep. You know what I mean? I really do know that there's at least 4 spots within a woman's vagina that I can give orgasms from, and I can do it at will. I really am a guy who's a serial dickmatizer. You know, I really am a dude who would look a bitch in the eye and be like, look me in my eyes and say my dick ain't good to get her to shut the fuck up when she gets an attitude. That's really who I am.
mm,
And when I was going through what I was going through in that situation where I was heartbroken and I was hurt in the situation because I felt like the woman in my life who I love was just setting up to just betray me. I was in a situation where this was starting to cause me to question myself. So when I wrote Adi Dottie, it was really about just a reminder to myself and a reminder to other men to just let them nuts hang.
mm. That's what's up, man. Man. I love that. I love that for you. Because I mean, all of us have the ability to dive into art, right? But there's only a few of us that are willing to paint that art from our pain, to a place where not only is it therapeutic, it is long lasting. you know. So that's really dope, bro. That you basically you had to remind these bitches like I'm Coach Brodie. What the fuck you talking about? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. You know what? And another part of the black exploitation is that I have a love, and you're an example of that. I have a love for older black men, for middle-aged black men who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s. Most of my friends, most of my peers, people who I interact with and have conversations with on a regular basis are men who are in their 40s, 50s, and sometimes 60s.
Mm,
So because of my love for that, I remember growing up watching kung fu movies. I'm a lifetime anime fan, and there's always these protagonists, there's always these super figures, there's these super niggas, right? Like Black Dynamite, you know what I mean, like Dolomite, right? Thinking about Iceberg Slim, I remember this is another very deep part of Adi Dottie. How much time do you have left?
probably about 10 more minutes.
All right, that's good. So I remember towards the end of December, and I made that song Adi Dottie earlier on. uh, I finally took the time to listen to the audiobook of Iceberg Slim's Pimp. And I was thinking about my upbringing, right? And my upbringing was very similar to Iceberg Slim's upbringing, where you have a mother who is someone who clings towards her social programming of being religious in nature, right? But then she'll have a man who's good to her, but she may not have that certain level of sexual attraction or natural submissiveness with. And then she'll meet a man who is emotionally unattached or who has the capacity to manipulate her. And then from that place, she will betray the man who's in her life, who's actually there for her, who's there to provide for her, who's there to protect her, who's there to love her. And then you're sitting there as a young boy feeling fucked up about it. And then it kind of creates this complex where you feel like, unless you are the sexual alpha male in a woman's life, nothing that she does or says to you is real. And this can
That's
and
real.
and this can create a complex where you can step into a pimp mentality from a standpoint of feeling like, well, you can't control what a woman does. So if a woman shows whore behaviors, it brings out a pimp mentality. And that pimp mentality is you have to stroke my ego to pay for my pain. You have to reciprocate me, or you have to pay me for the pain that I endure through your behavior, right? And that's really what it was. So when I started going through the things I was going through with the woman that I loved, I was like, bitch, you gotta pay me. Shit, bitch, send me send me the money that like, if this nigga cash apping, you send me his money. If you get turned on by this nigga, come suck this dick, fuck with me off of the energy that he giving you. You know what I mean? Take advantage of somebody else to show that you're not taking advantage of me, right? And that's really the mindset that I was in. I'm like, bitch, you're gonna have to do a whole lot of stuff for me. I had to make my website, you know what I mean? I had to do a whole bunch of stuff for me, because it's like I'm going through all this pain, I'm going through all this turmoil emotionally, internally. So the least that you can do is show me that you're worthy of this by the things you're willing to do for me.
Mm, understood. And just to comment on that, if you're not viewed as the alpha, in her life, everything else is like, you know, I ain't gonna say false, but it's BS. You know what I'm saying? I used to use the term first choice. Um, and my thing is for a long term relationship anyway. If I'm not that woman's first choice, I'm not going. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna put that
Absolutely.
energy into it. You feel me?
Absolutely. But it's like, what do you do when you find yourself in a situation where you recognize that this is a momentary thing? This is just a phase or a stage that a woman is in that she's going to come out of, right? Because I think that as men, we got to be honest and realistic that most relationships for the man or the woman aren't going to be monogamous for the full term of that relationship. There's going to be times where a woman may step out, it's going to be times where a man may step out, and that kind of comes par for the course. And if you hold this strong standard that if there's any infractions that the relationship can never work, then it's going to be something where it may feel kind of delusional. So when you start to accept female sexual nature, you kind of accept that, there may be other men that be in the mix during that time. And when you accept that, you kind of just come with a different value system than you would if you have a very strict monogamous point of view. So from that point of view, I looked at it like, I ain't even saying that I would never take the woman back. I cut her off. I blocked that bitch on everything. But what I did say is this, like in my mind, it's like this. We had times where she would be in her animus and be projecting her animus or animus possessed. And then we would go through a break, or she would go tell her father times we got into it, or I called her a bitch or some shit like that. And then her father ain't like me no more. Or she would tell her friends or her family about different things we were going through, which is an infraction, right? And this would lead to moments where she would feel unsure about things between us because she was a people pleaser. I don't really care too much what people think, to be honest with you. So in my mind, part of what this project really is about, not all of it, but part of it, what it's about is saying, I told her before she did the fuck shit that she did, before she even did it, I told her, I'm going to tell the story exactly how it happened. So part of it is really doing one or two things. And what those one or two things is this. Either one, because I know that I was in love with the woman. I've only loved one woman in my entire life, right? Because I knew I was in love with her, I knew that chances are I'd be willing to take her back, right? If she was willing to put the work in. So my goal was to do one or two things, right? Telling the story of our relationship. Either I'm going to cause her to feel so shamed and embarrassed by her actions that she won't want to come back, or that she will force herself to heal enough to be in a position where she can provide the things that I need, or it'll be a situation where she's going to have to overcome her shame, overcome the different things. I'm like, fuck it. I'm telling everybody how fucked up she did me. I'll be honest. Like, all right, cool. I started mirroring the triggers. I'm like, I'm telling everybody in my life how fucked up you did me. And if you decide you want to get your mind right, then I'm going to show you what it looks like to not give a fuck what people think. Because if I decide I love you, and I decide I care about you, and I decide I want to be with you, I don't care what nobody thinks. So because you spent all this time telling people our business in a way that causes you to feel unsure about us, if you fuck me over, I'm going to tell everybody. And when I tell everybody, if you decide you want to get your mind right and you want to fuck with me, then I'm going to tell everybody that I already told everything that you did too, that I don't give a fuck what they think, and I'm gonna accept you anyways. So it's just like that was kind of my thought process on it.
Understood. Man, kudos to you, my brother. You know what I'm saying? It's been a long time coming. And if you open to it, man, we do this again, my brother.
Yeah, we got to do a second part because we got about halfway through the second part of the project, and there's 3 parts of the project. But man, I really appreciate getting a chance to talk to you. We didn't get too deep into the validational loops the way we talked about it the other day, because that was some really deep shit that I really was fucking with the other day when we were talking about it. And I thought it was just a beautiful conversation that we had. I want to get deeper into the shadow work and the psychology of it. I know you got a trip that you need to make, and that sounds like a beautiful trip. And man, I want you to hit me up, let me know how it went. Maybe we can talk about that on the next one. And man, I love the fact that you were able to get on here and talk to me. I've been wanting to do this with you for a while. Man, I appreciate you, Mr. Brown. You've been one of my closest Dom buddies when it comes to this stuff right here. You've always treated me and spoke to me with the utmost respect. You're the reason I joined the back chat. You found one of my YouTube videos and you and me connected, and you start adding me to the back chats. And I just had the utmost appreciation and respect for you. And with your protocols, your mindset, the way you run your game, the way you run your household with TCF, you got your colors, everything, the royal blue and black. I just think it's a beautiful thing, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. I do art in my own way, you know what I'm saying? But as it relates to the art, man, I respect it, bro. You know what I'm saying? It's not everyone could do, I mean, everyone technically could do music, but to put your authentic work, your life experiences into the work, and we didn't even got on the videos. You've been, consistent with the videos. I can tell that this is your passion. I can tell that you studied. I respect you as well, my brother.
All right, no doubt, man. But I know you gotta get going. Did you have any other songs you wanted to talk about real quick before we get off of here?
No, those are the main ones that jumped out to me. But I'll can you do me a huge favor? If you could, whenever you do break them down into individual, songs, that will help me out more. and to dive in deeper, if that makes sense.
I'm gonna send you the track list.
Bet.
All right, no doubt, man. I appreciate you, and man, it's good. It's a good video, man.
Indeed, man. Hold it down. Yo.
All right, no doubt. Hey, I see Classic Craig in here.
Yeah, what's up, Brody? What's up, Brody? So, so yeah, man, I just want to say this, man. Nice show, nice show. Y'all had it all rolling. Y'all had it popping. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this, for ladies and gentlemen, this won't be the end for Coach Brodie and the illustrious and elusive Mr. Brown. So we'll see you guys again. We'll see them again. Till next time, that is that. We out. Peace.